Our protagonist was born as an illegitimate child of one of the most powerful martial arts families. From a young age, he had only one goal: to earn the recognition of his family. However, his dream was shattered when he was diagnosed with an illness that prevented him from practicing martial arts or even training in magic. He was cast out of the clan and ultimately met his end, betrayed and killed by his own relatives. Yet, he was given a second chance to change everything, returning to the moment of his birth with newfound abilities and a determination to set things right. Our story begins in the unexplored northern region of Korea, where a group of mercenaries is accompanied by several masked individuals on a mission to that area. One of the mercenaries watches the masked individuals with a concerned gaze, and when his companion notices this, he asks if this is his first exploration mission. The young man replies that he has ventured into gates and dungeons before, but this is his first time entering an unexplored region, which makes him somewhat nervous. His companion laughs, telling him that he'd better keep his composure, as no one has set foot in these areas for hundreds of years, meaning they are likely teeming with monsters, and they might even encounter some ancient beasts. The young man responds by saying that, despite this, they can rely on their expedition leader, especially since he belongs to the prestigious Lee family and is the patriarch's brother, which means his strength must be formidable. At that moment, his companion's expression changes, and he glances at the leader with a smirk, questioning whether he is truly referring to that man. He then explains that the leader is nothing more than an illegitimate son who was cast out of the clan for his weakness. Finally, the expedition leader is revealed. He is the 9th illegitimate son of the Lee family and the protagonist of our story, Shul. The mercenary continues, saying that Shul not only lacks talent, but also seems lazy, as he remains merely a 7th-rank martial artist despite his age. Just then, one of the masked individuals approaches Shul, informing him that it is time to move. Shul looks at him for a moment without saying a word, then gives a brief nod before standing up to follow them. It is later revealed that these masked individuals belong to the Shadowblade team, directly serving the patriarch of the prestigious Lee family. Their mission is supposedly to protect Shul, yet he does not feel reassured, as he harbors suspicions that something about this mission is amiss. We then learn about our protagonist's past, which was not always so grim. As a child, he was filled with dreams and ambitions to prove himself within the great family he was born into as an illegitimate son. His hopes soared when he was chosen by the highest-ranking weapon during the family's steel ceremony. At that moment, he believed that if he continued to work hard and give it his all, the day might come when he would earn everyone's recognition. However, things did not go as he had expected. He was later diagnosed with a strange illness that afflicted his mana pathways. And the shock came when the doctor informed him that he would never be able to learn magic, nor would martial arts be stable if he attempted to practice them. Under such circumstances, reaching the 9th rank would be nothing short of a miracle. Shul's father was deeply saddened when the head steward delivered this news to him. When the family members learned of it, they dismissed what happened during the steel ceremony as a mere mistake or coincidence. Despite this, Shul did not give up. He persevered and reached the 7th rank by the age of 25, determined to prove the doctor wrong. He was overjoyed with his achievement, even though all his siblings had reached that rank at much younger ages. But his joy was short-lived, as he was expelled from the clan when he turned 30. Were it not for his eldest brother's intervention, he would have left as a corpse. Shul remained on the run for 10 whole years. During that time, chaos spread. The unexplored regions expanded and monster raids grew in both number and severity. One day, as he sat on the street like a beggar, a newspaper flew into his face, which he caught by chance. His eyes welled up with tears as he read it. He had just discovered that his father, the man who once reigned supreme in martial arts and was the patriarch of the esteemed Lee clan, had passed away. His shock only deepened when he heard someone addressing him as young master. He looked up to find 2 members of the Shadowblade team standing before him. Shul tossed the newspaper aside and asked them sharply how they had found him, but they did not respond. Instead, one of them handed him an official decree addressed to him. Shul feels frustrated by their disregard for his question, but he takes the decree to examine it. He discovers that it is an assignment for an exploration mission in a specific area, but what strikes him as odd is that it bears the signature of Patriarch Jeonseong. Shul is surprised, as Jeonseong is his 3rd brother, prompting him to wonder what happened to his eldest brother. His thoughts are interrupted by one of the Shadowblade members, who informs him that the departure is set for an hour from now. As the masked man turns to leave, Shul asks him to wait. He inquires about his eldest brother's fate but receives no response, realizing that the team members will not divulge any information on the matter. He tries to understand why he has been assigned such a mission, especially since he has not wielded a sword in 10 years and is merely a 7th-rank martial artist. The The masked man then turns to him, asking if he means to say that he is refusing the order. Shul knows well that refusal means death, so he replies that he will carry out the mission. The Shadow Blade members vanish instantly, as if they had evaporated. Shul grows even more furious over the lack of information and the mission he has been forced into. We return to the present, where Shul is walking with the masked individuals and the mercenaries toward their destination. Suddenly, one of the mercenaries stops, his face filled with astonishment upon noticing something unusual. Before him stands an abandoned building, surprisingly intact despite being in such an isolated region. One of the masked men informs him that they will be entering. Without hesitation, they pass through the gate and cautiously begin exploring the place. As soon as they step inside, they are stunned by the overwhelming number of skulls and skeletal remains, both human and beast alike. But what shocks them even more is the presence of an ancient beast's corpse. At that moment, one of the masked individuals orders his comrades to move. Without hesitation, they swiftly charge at the mercenaries. In an instant, they begin slaughtering them one by one, with merciless brutality. Shul and one of the mercenaries are left in utter shock at the scene unfolding before them. They scream, demanding to know what is happening. One of the masked men responds while attacking the mercenary beside Shul, telling him that he should have realized from the start that he was doomed. He adds that it is an honor to die for the will of the clan. But before the masked man can deliver the fatal blow, a sword suddenly pierces his abdomen. It is quickly revealed that Shul was the one who struck him, demanding to know who is behind all this. However, to Shul's astonishment, the masked man remains standing despite the wound. He grabs the sword lodged in his body and informs Shul that they were ordered to bring him to this place, then kill him swiftly without leaving a trace, before shattering the sword with his bare hand. The masked man continues, warning Shul not to resist unless he wishes to suffer before dying. Shul's shock intensifies as he watches the man's wound heal within mere seconds. At that moment, one of the mercenaries attempts to attack the masked man from behind. However, the latter turns in the blink of an eye and slices him in half with a single strike. Shul falls to the ground, barely dodging the same fate. The masked man sneers at him, calling him pathetic for thinking he would be stronger than this. He then dashes forward at incredible speed and delivers a powerful kick, sending Shul flying across the room until he crashes into the corpse of the ancient beast lying there. The impact leaves Shul in excruciating pain, causing him to cough up blood. Despite the agony, an overwhelming rage surges within him. He refuses to die like this. He desperately searches for a way to survive and realizes he needs a weapon. Scanning his surroundings, he spots an old sword embedded in the corpse of a massive beast nearby. Without hesitation, he rushes toward it, thinking that even if it is old, a sword strong enough to kill such a formidable creature must surely still be usable. Shul pulls the sword, hoping it will be of use. However, he is taken aback by what happens next and freezes in place. Before his eyes, the sword crumbles into dust and vanishes into the air. He is unable to comprehend why this is happening or how to react. The masked man approaches, remarking that he never expected a member of the Lee clan to be this weak. Still, at the very least, he will die bearing such a great name, he says before delivering the finishing blow. Shul collapses to the ground, struck down by the masked man. He wonders if this is truly how it all ends, after a life filled with nothing but hardship and endless running. Meanwhile, the sword continues to dissipate into nothingness. As he lingers on the edge of death, he thinks that if he were given another chance at life, then, as he sinks into the abyss, he hears a voice asking whether this child is Yu Zhong's son. The voice startles him. It belongs to his father. When he opens his eyes, he sees his father asking the head steward about Yu Zhong's fate. The steward responds that when they found her, she had already passed away. Shul's confusion grows. Not only was his father supposed to be dead, but he also looks younger. And even the head steward appears much younger as well. Shul tries to reach out to call them, only to be shocked when he sees a small hand. Examining it further, he is utterly stunned to realize that it is his own. Shul is overwhelmed, unable to grasp what is happening or how he is still alive. He assumes that he must be witnessing his life flashing before his eyes, before moving on to the afterlife. Just then he hears his father say, "Young will be a suitable name for him." He then instructs the head steward, Choi, to arrange for a servant and a few Shadow Force members to serve as the child's guards. He also orders that the boy be prepared to attend the steel selection ceremony alongside the 8th child. The steward acknowledges the order immediately, but he also expresses concern, pointing out that the child is still too young and unprepared, as is the 8th child, who is only a few months older. However, Lee Jia-shin, Shul's father and the leader of the Lee martial clan, dismisses the concern, stating that it does not matter. This response leaves Shul even more shocked. He finally exhales when his father leaves the room, as his presence exuded an overwhelming aura of power and authority. Even though it had been a long time since he had seen his father, Shul begins to reflect again, wondering if this is truly real. Everything feels too tangible to be a mere recollection of memories, and the conversation that just took place actually happened. It was not just an illusion or an old memory. Yet he struggles to accept it, telling himself that this cannot be real. If it is, then it means he has returned to his miserable past once again. Months pass following his return to the past, and the awaited day finally arrives within the esteemed Lee clan. It is the day of the steel selection ceremony, where the clan's children showcase their talents based on the weapons that choose them. His father had been chosen by many weapons, making him the greatest swordsman of his generation. Meanwhile, the swords had chosen his eldest brother, Thomas, who became renowned for his mastery of both magic and swordsmanship. Now it is Shul's turn, and he feels immense pressure and anxiety about this event. But his thoughts are interrupted, as his maid Jiahua enters the room with excitement, exclaiming that the young master is fully prepared. She notes with admiration that despite being in a new environment, he never cries, and that he is an exceptionally mature and quiet child. She then picks him up in her arms and assures him with confidence that he will emerge from the ceremony with remarkable choices, paving the way for a bright future ahead. Shul is deeply moved by her words. To him, Jiahua was like a mother. Unfortunately, she had been forced to leave the estate due to the jealousy and malice of his older siblings. She was the only one who had ever wept for his loneliness as a child and had stayed by his side until the very end. Determined not to let history repeat itself, Shul makes a firm decision. He will protect her, no matter what it takes. At that moment, another maid enters the room, informing them that the preparations for the ceremony are complete and that they must leave immediately. At the same time, the father is informed that the preparations are complete, meaning they can proceed now. Without delay, Lord Li Jia begins making his way to the ceremony site, followed by the children and their attendants. Upon their arrival at the vast ceremonial grounds, where a large crowd is gathered, attention is drawn to Shul, who is regarded as the illegitimate son brought from the outside. Little is known about his origins or lineage, except that he is the son of the clan leader, Lord Li Jia. A discussion arises among the clan elders regarding this matter. Present in the gathering are Lady Baek Hua Yan, the esteemed clan minister, Lord Li Jia Hong, the eldest son of the clan, Li Miao Zheng, and the third son, Li Jianxiang. The eldest son, Miao Zheng, expresses his surprise, stating that he does not recall any of them participating in the ceremony at such a young age. His younger brother, Jian Xiong, responds, admitting that he too finds the situation strange and unexpected. He wonders how this brother suddenly appeared among them, but is nonetheless curious to see what will happen. Patriarch Li Jia officially announces the commencement of the steel selection ceremony. He addresses one of the attendants, instructing her to bring forth the child, Hua, immediately to begin the ritual. The attendant steps forward, carrying the chosen girl, who is the eighth among the children selected for the ceremony that day. Lord Li Jia retrieves a sharp knife from his pocket to begin the ritual. He then takes the hand of the young girl, Hua, who is filled with bewilderment at what is happening. The child is taken aback when the patriarch makes a cut on her hand, causing her finger to bleed. She bursts into tears from the shock and pain, but the ceremony continues. One of the most prestigious swords, the ivory blade, selects her. This sword is considered an artistic masterpiece and had never responded to any previous generation. Lord Li Jia takes the sword and declares that, from this moment on, the ivory blade belongs to Hua. The attendants rejoice and congratulate Lady Baek Hua on the occasion, considering the child a rare talent born into this esteemed family. Lady Baek smiles confidently and thanks them for their compliments and blessings. Following this, Lord Li Jia announces that it is now time for Young's ritual. Upon hearing this name, the audience immediately realizes that it refers to the illegitimate child brought from the outside. They question how he is being allowed to participate in such a sacred ceremony. However, the patriarch ignores the murmurs and proceeds with the ritual, cutting Shul's finger. The child does not shed any tears, though he feels a slight pain, prompting the patriarch to pat his head in praise of his bravery. Shul recalls that in his previous life, he had been chosen by the Clear Echo Sword, one of the heavenly ranked blades. However, he understands that he cannot rely on his past choices in this life. Meanwhile, Lord Hong observes the situation, listening to the murmurs of those opposing the participation of an illegitimate child in the ceremony. Lady Baek's expression also suggests she is not in a good mood. Yet, when Hong considers the matter himself, he finds that having an illegitimate son of his brother is not surprising. However, he also realizes that if the situation remains unchanged, the boy will face a difficult life. Surviving here as an illegitimate son would be nearly impossible. For instance, the strict elder of the clan, Li Chul-jung, makes his presence known, showing clear interest in the illegitimate child. Hong greets him respectfully despite feeling uneasy and finding it difficult to read the elder's expression. The elderly Jung asks Hong whether this is the child that the patriarch brought to the estate. Hong confirms, stating that this is indeed the child whom the Shadow Force discovered and retrieved. The elder expresses his surprise at the patriarch's decision, questioning why he would bring in an illegitimate child of unknown origins and allow him to participate in the steel selection ceremony in such a manner. However, in the end, he concedes that if the patriarch has tested the child himself, then he must know that this ceremony is meaningless for an illegitimate child. The minister grows angry at the elder's remark and sharply demands to know what he means by such words. The old man apologizes and responds, explaining that his own story is not much different. He too was once an illegitimate child who failed miserably in being chosen by any weapon. It is a well-known tale. For an illegitimate child will always remain just that, and he must know his place. Minister Hong grows enraged, unable to tolerate Elder Jung's insinuations any longer, and bursts out in fury, declaring that he will not continue listening to such talk. However, his outburst is suddenly interrupted by a blinding light radiating from the ceremonial grounds, leaving everyone in shock at its intensity. The elder, however, is the most stunned among them, unable to believe what is happening or what it means. While Minister Hong is no less astonished, his reaction is different. His face fills with pride and joy, remarking in disbelief that, even though he is witnessing it with his own eyes, he still cannot fully accept it. The light emanating from the ceremonial site and the weapons is more dazzling than ever before. Among them, the Blood Spirit Spear Iron Epic Blade shines brilliantly, alongside the legendary sword Heavenly Maho and the Great Celestial Dragon Bow. Even weapons that already have chosen wielders respond strongly to the presence of the illegitimate son, Jung. It is an unbelievable sight. Even the elder members of the clan find their own weapons reacting to him. The eldest brother, Jan Seong, questions whether anyone can believe what they are witnessing, admitting that their younger brother appears to possess an unimaginable talent. Jan Seong then affirms that it certainly seems that way. As the crowd is engulfed in astonishment, murmurs spread. How could an illegitimate child possibly achieve this? But the patriarch silences everyone with his firm voice, stating that the clan's laws are clear. Every weapon that chooses the young master must belong to him. However, the matter was not so simple. He then declares that he will accept suggestions that might help resolve this issue. Minister Hong raises his hand, announcing that he has an idea, prompting Patriarch Li Jia to ask him to present it. The minister proposes that granting the child all these weapons would contradict the true purpose of the steel selection ceremony, as the ritual must continue for generations to come. Therefore, the child should be allowed to choose only one weapon from among them. The patriarch agrees, remarking that it is not a bad idea and deciding to implement it. As a result, the weapons are presented before Jung, and he is placed at the center to choose the one he desires. Shul feels that this ceremony is entirely different from the steel selection he experienced in his previous life. However, this works in his favor, as he decides to seize the opportunity to gain the greatest advantage possible. He begins walking among the weapons, examining the swords such as the dragon-slaying butterfly of Silion, the sacred spears crafted from the bones of the holy white whale, and the magical staves like Valahein, forged from the world tree where the spirits slumber. He also passes by the celestial sword, said to have been created when the sun, moon, and stars aligned. But he is searching for the greatest weapon of them all, and he has already made his decision. The father notices the direction in which his son Jung is heading and realizes his destination. He is moving toward the sword discovered by the clan's founder in the unexplored lands, a sword covered in dust, shrouded in mystery, with no one ever having been able to unlock its true power. This is the Black Twilight Sword, the weapon Shul has chosen. Patriarch Li Jia ponders the known abilities of this sword, which do not justify its classification as a heavenly ranked weapon. Yet, it has been stored among the celestial weapons, perhaps because it serves as a symbol tied to the clan's founder. None of the clan's descendants or ancestors had ever been chosen by this sword. Still, he is uncertain whether this is merely a random selection by a young child, or if there is a deeper significance behind it. Father Li Jia lifts Jung in his arms, affirming that this is undoubtedly another divine intervention. The child Jung had made his choice, and in turn, he had been chosen by the sword of the great ancestor, the Black Twilight Sword. Thus, the steel selection ceremony came to an end. At that moment, Lady Beck commented that, as an illegitimate son, Jung would become a great nuisance to them. However, she would not hesitate to eliminate him if he ever stood in her way. 9 years have passed since the day of the steel selection, and Jung grew up within the Li clan's palace. One morning, he informed his caretaker that he would be heading for training in the afternoon. She attempted to accompany him, but he refused, assuring her that he could go on his own. The caretaker remarked that the trainee grounds seemed empty, questioning why he would go to train alone, especially since the first training area was not particularly large. Young replied that someone was waiting for him there. Suddenly, a loud scream interrupted their conversation. The caretaker noted that it seemed someone was training in the 7th area. Indeed, a young trainee was present there, with an instructor warning her about the way she was gripping her sword, cautioning that she would end up injuring herself if she continued that way. That trainee was Li Hua, who was practicing swordsmanship. When Young and his caretaker arrived at the scene, they realized that the scream had come from her. The caretaker advised Young to address her as his elder sister, rather than calling her Eighth, or using any other title. Young muttered in protest, pointing out that the age difference between them was barely 5 months, so why should he speak to her with excessive respect? They continued listening as the instructor gave her advice, telling her to treat the sword as if it were an extension of her body and to grip it carefully to avoid injury. However, Hua became furious at his remarks and yelled at him to stop bothering her with constant criticism, insisting that what truly mattered was fighting with the sword, regardless of how she held it. The instructor attempted to calm her down, urging her to take her time and try again, reassuring her that he had confidence in her success this time. At that moment, Young asked his caretaker about the identity of the instructor who was making such an effort to train Hua. She responded that he was Baek Lee Haiwan from the Ebony Division. Young remarked that he seemed far too talented to be an instructor for a 9-year-old girl. His caretaker reacted emotionally, pointing out that a suitable instructor for his talent would be assigned soon as well. Then she suddenly burst into tears, apologizing for her inability to care for him properly due to her own shortcomings, especially since Lady Hua had grown up in an environment that provided proper nutrition. Young asked her to stop repeating such talk, assuring her that he was grateful to her, but had no need for trainers like those. He explained that they had come to the clan because of its martial prowess, not for his sake personally. Moreover, he revealed that he had already found the right people to learn from. In the first training grounds, an exclusive training area, the space was filled with weapons that symbolized the prestige of the Li clan, renowned for its martial arts excellence. Young commented that the place felt more like a museum than a training ground, but he knew there was a good reason for its existence. The reason was that this area stored ancient weapons. Unlike the other training zones, Young looks around and spots an old sword, stepping forward to take it. He considers that, for now, he can use it solely for training. As he begins practicing, he reflects on the sudden changes that have taken place since he returned 9 years into the past. However, what astonished him the most among them all was his strange new ability, the power to read the memories stored within weapons. Young focuses on the memories within the sword, allowing him to reinforce his fundamentals as they form the very basis of advanced techniques. He starts executing the movements he sees in the sword's memories, enabling him to learn and train more effectively than any instructor could teach him. The older and more prestigious a weapon was, and the stronger the bond between it and its wielder, the clearer Young could perceive its memories. After years of training, Young successfully masters the 7-star sword technique, having been able to read most of the memories from the weapons stored here over the past 2 years. However, his concentration is suddenly interrupted when someone comments that it has been a long time since they last saw someone capable of mastering the 7-star sword. Turning around, Young finds himself face to face with the clan minister, his uncle, Lord Hongjia Li, a 4th-rank warrior. Although he is not a direct descendant of the clan, his acknowledged skills earned him the rank of general. Moreover, he was one of the closest people to Young, both in this life and the previous one, always standing by his side. His uncle speaks with pride, saying that he sees Young training every day and catches sight of him whenever he returns from his duties. He acknowledges the injustice Young feels due to his siblings' discrimination and favoritism against him, but he encourages him to move past it and prove himself. Young replies that he is fine, but he is still a member of the esteemed Li clan. He fully understands that recognition from the clan will only be earned through his swordsmanship skills. That is why he has resolved to prove himself solely through his own strength. Hong feels a sense of pride in him, yet at the same time, he is troubled by the reality that this boy will always remain an illegitimate child, no matter what he achieves. His uncle then informs him that the time is approaching for him to reach the age of eligibility for the naming ceremony. He then adds that, though it might be late to ask this, he wonders if Young would accept him as his instructor until the ceremony arrives. However, Young's response surprises him when he outright refuses the offer. Hong asks why and what makes him unwilling to have him as a personal mentor. Young replies that he is aware of the rule prohibiting him from having a teacher before the naming ceremony, and he does not wish to put his uncle in a difficult position. His uncle responds that his siblings do not care about such rules and break them all the time. training under renowned masters while following diets rich in nutrients. But Young answers that he believes rules should not be taken lightly, even if others disregard them. Moreover, as he had stated before, he wants to prove himself on his own. Uncle Hong is deeply moved. He never expected to hear such words from a child who had not yet turned 10. In fact, Young's gaze reminds him of his eldest brother, the clan leader. Hong replies that it is now evident he will not be able to change Young's mind, noting that he is just as stubborn as his father and not easily persuaded. As such, regrettably, he will be of no use to him. This frustrates Hong, but he still asks if there is anything he can do to help. Young realizes that this is the opportunity he had been waiting for. He had hoped his uncle would ask this very question. He tells him that he does indeed need a favor. Hong, feeling excited, urges him not to hesitate and to tell him what he needs right away. However, his excitement quickly turns into astonishment when Young requests permission to see what lies inside the secret vault. After that, Mr. Hong gets into his car and heads toward a heavily guarded building. However, a security guard blocks his path, requesting him to stop for a moment. He then asks for his identification and the reason for his visit to this particular place. Hong responds by introducing himself as the general supervisor of Tai Hong, explaining that he is here for the regular evaluation. Accompanying him is the youngest son of the Song Mo Lee family, Mr. Young Song Lee, who is here as an observer to learn and gain experience. The security guard confirms his identity and then grants him entry. As the gates open, the car proceeds inside. Young tries to act with childlike innocence to avoid suspicion, looking around in awe as if he were a fascinated child. He continues to express amazement at the sheer size of the place, but Mr. Hong notices his unusual reaction and asks if he is truly that excited. Young enthusiastically affirms, explaining that this warehouse holds the family's greatest treasures. This convinces him that once he reaches his destination, he will find what he is searching for: a legendary weapon and an ancient artifact unknown to most. For those who seek rare relics, this warehouse may contain items beyond their wildest expectations, as it is the armory of the Lee Marshall clan. At this point, Mr. Hong explains that the lower floor houses weapons that have been sealed away for certain reasons. Young, in astonishment, asks if these weapons are at the level of monstrous entities that could consume their wielders. Mr. Hong acknowledges his knowledge of such matters, but warns him that recklessly using such a weapon could lead to both physical and mental destruction. When he notices a hint of concern on Young's face, he asks if he wishes to back out if he is afraid. However, Young firmly denies any fear. Mr. Hong reassures him, stating that there is no need for concern since Young won't be able to enter such a dangerous place anyway. He then informs him that he will proceed to oversee matters and return shortly. Additionally, he advises Young to take his time and explore the area at his leisure. Young bids him farewell as he departs. The moment he is left alone, he sighs, muttering that pretending to be an innocent child is no easy task. He then uses the elevator to descend to the ground floor, a place known as the Weapons Tomb. It is where numerous great relics and weapons are sealed away, but his purpose here is to find a specific weapon: the Infinity Dagger, also known as Mujin. It may appear to be just a dagger, but when infused with magical energy, it transforms, allowing its wielder to alter its shape, length, weight, and all of its attributes at will. Before he traveled back in time, the person who discovered this weapon was Li Jiansong. Due to its overwhelming power and unconventional nature, he was granted the title of Manbayun, meaning the infinite variable. Young recalls that this very title was what enabled his third brother, Li Jiansong, to take leadership of the clan, instead of the eldest sibling. Later, he tracked him down and eliminated him to remove any potential threat. However, this is all Young knows up to this point. To prevent history from repeating itself, he has only one option. Though the search will take time, he has no choice but to inspect these weapons one by one, striving to obtain Mujin before his brother Li Jiansong can find it. Thus, Young devotes his time to searching for the Infinity Dagger. However, an hour has passed since he arrived, and he has examined nearly every dagger-like weapon. Yet, he has found nothing that resembles Mujin. Despite this, he remains certain that the weapon is here. Therefore, he must search more thoroughly without any carelessness. As he continues exploring the area, he accidentally bumps into a table, causing a rusty weapon to fall from it. This surprises him, as the weapon is heavily encrusted with rust, making him wonder how it could have reached such an extreme state of decay. As Young approaches the weapon, an immense surge of energy bursts from it, startling and alarming him, as he has no idea what is happening all of a sudden. Without any warning or explanation, he finds himself in an unfamiliar place, a scene of devastation, corpses, and chaos. He quickly realizes that this must be the memory embedded within the rusted dagger, yet something about these memories feels vastly different from any other weapon he has encountered. A strange sensation washes over him, as though he had been in this very place before. Suddenly, an overwhelming presence fills the air, pressing down on everything around it with immense force. He then discovers that this presence belongs to a being that emerged from a blue rift long ago, a primordial monster that had devoured countless civilizations, known as the Apocalypse Beast. A wave of fear engulfs him, as he realizes he is facing imminent doom. Even if this is just a memory, there is no possible way he could defeat such a being. The only logical option is to flee, but just as he considers running, an ancient warrior, resembling a samurai, appears behind him. With breathtaking speed, the warrior charges toward the beast, while Young watches in complete shock. He follows the warrior's movements as he strikes the monstrous being down in a single slash. At that moment, Young realizes that the man before him is a demon-slaying warrior. However, he remains unable to comprehend how this warrior managed to annihilate such a colossal entity with just one attack. His curiosity about the fighter's identity deepens until he is utterly stunned, realizing that the warrior has noticed his presence and is now questioning who he is. This should not be possible. The warrior then demands to know why he is in this place, and it does not stop there. Without hesitation, he launches an attack, declaring that he will send Young out of this world in the most merciful and painless way possible. As Young lets out a cry in response to the assault, he suddenly finds himself back in reality. The rusted dagger falls from his grasp as he remains frozen in fear and awe at what he just witnessed. His body begins trembling uncontrollably. It is the first time he has ever experienced anything like this. The sensation from witnessing the weapon's memories felt more real than mere illusion, as if he had actually been there. At that moment, Young notices something strange about the rusted dagger. He picks it up again, becoming absolutely certain that this is the weapon he came for. He deliberately pricks his hand with the blade, letting it draw blood, sealing his decision to claim it as his own. The dagger flares with intense light, its energy bursting forth, before gradually settling down, a sign that it has acknowledged Young as its new master. Excited, he begins testing the weapon, striking with it multiple times, even attempting to replicate the movements of skilled sword masters. Though his heart races with exhilaration at wielding such a powerful weapon, he grows more confident with each motion. By the time he finishes experimenting, he has no doubt the weapon in his possession is Mujin. This realization fills him with immense pride and satisfaction. A week after obtaining Mujin, Young continues his relentless training in mastering its use, disguising it as a ring on his finger to ensure no one discovers its existence. However, his mind remains fixated on recalling the stance and technique the warrior in the dagger's memory used to slay the beast. Yet, his understanding of it remains limited. He knows only the name of the technique and its form, as if he is still far from grasping its full potential. Despite this, beyond its sheer power, the warrior's movements exuded grace and precision. No matter how many times Young attempts to replicate them, he fails each time. Yet, he does not feel frustrated, for before he turned back time, he was only half talented. He could not even master the basic techniques of his clan. Though it is just one technique, it is the first time he has ever encountered an advanced combat style. That is why he must understand how the man executed those flawless movements. After all, he was the closest person to the warrior, and the only one who could remember his exact way of fighting. Suddenly, an unexpected thought crosses Young's mind. He is not an adult like the warrior he saw in Mujin's memories. He is merely a child, no older than 9. It is unreasonable to expect himself to imitate the movements of a grown man, so naturally, he cannot fully display his potential. He decides to adjust the technique to suit his own body and strength, executing it smoothly and with controlled precision. Young closes his eyes, attempting to gather his energy and focus more on his own combat style. He then begins wielding his sword in a manner that suits his body, utilizing fluidity and calm precision. With repeated attempts, he finally succeeds in demonstrating his true strength, executing an impressive sword strike. A wave of exhilaration washes over him as he realizes he is finally beginning to sense true power. Now, all that remains is finding a solution to his struggle with using magical energy. Despite his repeated attempts to apply the magical energy circulation technique he learned long ago, it never seems to work for him, which means something crucial is still missing. This makes it incredibly difficult to perform techniques that rely on magical energy, but in any case, he has no choice but to keep trying. Just as he resumes his training, a girl suddenly appears behind him, holding a sword, and asks where he learned that technique. Young turns to her, puzzled by her identity, though he immediately notices that her black hair and honey-colored eyes indicate that she belongs to the direct lineage of the Songmo Lee clan. The girl responds in surprise, wondering if he truly does not recognize her or if he is merely pretending. However, she soon laughs it off, joking that it is entirely possible he has never seen her before, especially since she rarely shows her face. She then steps closer and asks for his name. Young replies by introducing himself. The girl chuckles, commenting that his name is quite unique, before introducing herself as Lee Kyung-hwa. At that moment, Young realizes that she is his youngest aunt, Kyung-hwa, something his uncle had once mentioned to him before he turned back time. Aunt Lee Kyung approaches Young again, repeating her question about where or from whom he learned that technique. Young, in turn, asks why she is so interested in knowing. She explains that what he just performed is an ancient martial art known as Gumu Sul, one of the combat styles she is particularly fond of. She then elaborates that, in this historical period, powerful magical beasts are still active. Reaching into her pocket, she retrieves an old journal or book and hands it to Young, saying it is a gift from her. He is taken aback by the gesture but accepts it nonetheless, then asks her about its contents. She simply urges him to open it and read. As he flips through the pages, Young realizes that it is a handwritten journal, though the handwriting is terrible. However, its content appears to discuss magical techniques. Not only that, but it also contains high-level combat knowledge that is difficult for him to comprehend. This makes him wonder if the rumors about his aunt were actually false. At that moment, Aunt Lee Kyung points to some of the writings, explaining that these ancient magical techniques are based on magical pathways. In the past, magic could only be used by channeling it through internal pathways. In the modern era, however, magic is stored within the heart before being utilized. She then asks if he believes it is wise to dismiss ancient magic as useless, pointing out that it is entirely possible that past magical techniques were far more advanced than those of the present. For this reason, she has been researching amplification and transformation techniques, but she still lacks sufficient records. Young realizes that she is referring to techniques similar to Mujin's magical abilities, so he asks her to wait for a moment. He then turns back to his sword, contemplating how magical energy spreads from its source throughout the body. He soon notices that the energy does not return to its source, which means all he has to do is circulate the magic solely through the magical pathways. This was the method he previously failed to understand from the warrior in Mujin's memories. But now, to some extent, he has reached a viable conclusion, and he confirms his success when he sees his strike become significantly stronger. Young is completely astonished as he witnesses firsthand the immense difference when using magical energy, and his aunt Lee Kyung is equally shocked. She approaches him and asks if he fully understands what he just accomplished and how he managed to achieve it. She then inquires whether this is truly the martial art he has been training in and asks him to explain how he was able to master it. Young avoids giving a direct answer and instead asks her why he should reveal such information. She responds by saying that he managed to reach this level thanks to the notebook she gave him, and besides, she has dedicated her entire life to ancient martial arts. She spent over 10 years searching for this combat style, even after being cast out of the family home. She then offers him a deal. If he tells her, she will do anything he asks in return. Young replies that he has 3 conditions before answering her. The first is that she must never speak about him or anything related to him to anyone, no matter what, unless he grants her permission. She agrees immediately but asks why he is so secretive. Young explains that he dislikes people talking about him recklessly. He then continues, stating that the second condition is that she must never lie to him again, so they can build mutual trust. He assures her that if she abides by this, he will tell her the truth as much as he can. She agrees to this condition as well, then asks about his final request. Young takes a moment to think, then begins explaining the details of his last condition to his aunt, Lee Kyung. A year after Young's encounter with his aunt, he is training in the courtyard when his caretaker approaches. With his aunt present, Young asks why she has come to the training grounds. She hands him a sealed envelope, informing him that it arrived today. Young takes the envelope, appearing as though he had expected it, while his aunt Lee Kyung remains unaware of its contents. Upon opening it, Young discovers that it contains a summons detailing the instructions for the naming ceremony. However, he quickly notices that the seal and signature do not belong to his father, but rather to Elder Lee Myung-song, which surprises him. He finds it strange, as he had not heard any news about being assigned to a mission anytime soon. His aunt Lee Kyung becomes furious upon learning about the naming ceremony. Young, puzzled by her reaction, asks why she is so upset. She tells him that they have only just begun achieving some stability, and if he attends the naming ceremony, he will be bound to remain there. She tries to convince him not to go at all. However, Young understands why his aunt is taking such a stance. He knows that they had made an agreement between them and had been conducting research on magical arts together. They had been studying the differences between ancient magic, which relies on the magical core, and modern magic, which depends on magical pathways, working on developing a new form of magic that integrates both. Their approach involved using the magical core to store and alter the properties of magical energy while utilizing magical pathways to control and activate it efficiently. Thanks to this, Young had gained magical abilities that surpassed those of his peers. But now his aunt would undoubtedly keep pressuring him not to attend. Still, he knows that failing to appear at the ceremony would have severe consequences, so he tries to reason with her, explaining that he cannot avoid attending the naming ceremony. He reassures her that there is no need to worry. Although their research time will be slightly reduced, his training in magic and the restoration of ancient magical arts will continue as planned. His aunt then asks how he intends to accomplish that, especially since his schedule during the naming ceremony will undoubtedly be packed with training. Young replies that he will train in modern magical techniques while simultaneously continuing his study of ancient magical arts, assuring her that there is nothing to worry about. Thus, Young begins his special training for the naming ceremony, where instructor Jang Wook announces that they will start by enduring magical attacks for half an hour. Young notices that things have changed from the past, just as he expected. Previously, as the 9th child, someone who had not even received basic training, he should have been overwhelmed and collapsed instantly. But now, he is capable of using magic to defend himself against those attacks. The instructor takes note of what Young is doing, realizing that he is blocking all the attacks effortlessly, as if merely playing with them. What is even stranger is that Young is simultaneously observing the 8th trainee, evaluating her skills and monitoring the effectiveness of her previous training under the instructors. Considering that all of this is coming from an illegitimate child who has yet to turn 10, the situation is incredibly perplexing. At this point, even referring to him as an illegitimate child feels like an insult in light of the abilities he possesses. Instructor Jang Wook reflected to himself, realizing that he needed to reconsider his perspective, especially since this training was not merely preparation for the naming ceremony, but a means to pass down all the knowledge they possessed to the young masters. Finally, after an exhausting day of training, Young finishes his session and feels the need to rest. However, he cannot stop thinking about how insane his clan must be for making a 10-year-old endure a barrage of electric shocks under the pretense of building resistance to magical attacks. What he did not expect, however, was for the instructor to apologize for this evaluation method, and he also began to notice that the way others looked at him had changed slightly compared to the past. In any case, he needed to leave now and get some rest before the next training session. As Young prepares to leave, he notices Hua suddenly attacking him, but he manages to block her strike. She tells him that she wants to talk to him before he leaves. He responds by telling her to be quick, as he has no time to waste on her, which makes Hua furious. She warns him about his words, reminding him that she is the legitimate daughter, whereas he is nothing more than an illegitimate child. Unbothered, Young turns away and walks off, saying he has no time for her. Hua's anger escalates, and she uses her magical power to attack him, demanding that he not ignore her while she is speaking. Young notices her resorting to magic, but effortlessly evades her attack again. He stops her by grabbing her by the collar, forcing her to halt. He then tells her that she can go cry to her mother if she wants, but she should stop bothering him because he has no time for her nonsense. Frustrated, Young walks away, but Hua suddenly starts speaking, telling him that because of what he did, along with the incident during the sword possession ceremony at the steel selection ritual, she is now constantly being compared to him. This has made things completely unfair for her. She hardly sleeps, eats only small meals, and does nothing but train, while all Young had to do was be born with a great talent. Young responds by saying that blaming others for personal failures is undoubtedly convenient. As she said herself, he is just an illegitimate child. That means even having the luxury of shifting blame onto others is something he does not have. If she cannot sleep, then she should simply stay awake. If she cannot keep up with him because of her diet, then she might as well stop eating altogether. And if she holds a grudge against him, she should do everything in her power to defeat him. As for an apology for everything he just said, she should take it by force, because that is the way of the Songmo Li clan. Hua, enraged, declares that she will surpass him in the naming ceremony and make him feel humiliated for his words. She even claims that she will force him to bow down and beg for her forgiveness as his elder sister. Young simply replies that he will be waiting to see if she can make that happen. In the 7th training area, designated for the direct members of the family, Lady Baek Hua arrives. She orders the servants to leave, stating that she wishes to speak with her daughter in private. Upon entering the hall, she finds Hua training alone. She calls out to her and asks what she is doing there by herself. Realizing that her mother has arrived, Hua turns to face her. She then responds that she was just training for a while. Lady Baek asks if the rumors about her being defeated by the illegitimate son are true. Hua remains silent, prompting her mother to continue speaking, reminding her that she had told her before, if she could not handle him, she needed to crush him. If she was doing all of this to avoid punishment, she could stop, as her mother no longer intends to punish her anyway. Hua responds, saying that she fully understands how her mother views her training, but she is doing it because she wants to. She truly desires to defeat that person, not because she was ordered to, but because she wants to achieve it on her own. Her mother, Lady Beck, asks if she has been influenced by that illegitimate son, whose training has had no clear foundation so far. She then reminds her that she is from the main lineage of the Songmo Li clan, whereas he is merely an illegitimate child, meaning they are entirely different. Naturally, overcoming him should be expected, but it seems she has been affected by him, which explains her enthusiasm. After that, her mother hands her a bottle containing a liquid, telling her that this is Mim Wang, a deadly poison. She then adds that if she cannot surpass the illegitimate son, she has another option. She can eliminate him. This, after all, is the way of the Songmo Li clan when it comes to achieving victory. Meanwhile, at Young's residence, his caretaker reviews his weekly results and is visibly surprised. In particular, when she reads the 14th week's report, she finds that Young has secured first place. Young asks her opinion, wondering if she feels relieved that her efforts with him were not in vain. She embraces him and tells him that she did nothing at all. It was his hard work that got him this far. Suddenly, his aunt Li Kyung bursts into the room, radiating excitement as she urges him to join her for training. Young replies that he has just returned from a training session, but she smiles and tells him that if he trains in magic with her, he will feel all his exhaustion fade away. He responds by saying he has never heard of such a thing, but she insists, confident that he will feel better if he trains with her. Young agrees, mentioning that he actually wants to show her something. His aunt asks him what it is, but then suddenly stops, as if she has already guessed. She then asks him if it has to do with the first star. Young chuckles and looks at her, confirming her suspicion. After that, Young follows his aunt, who begins explaining that the foundation of magical techniques consists of 3 stages. The first stage is body reinforcement, which enhances durability and strength. Next is the inner energy stage, which alters the nature of magical power. Finally, there is the external power stage, allowing the user to manifest supernatural abilities through magic. However, she explains that the magic she wants to teach him is different. Even in the first stage, it allows for multiple forms and a variety of abilities. That is why her magic is divided into phases known as maturation. Li Kyung then asks Young if he feels uncomfortable handling his magical energy circuit. She had assumed it would take him at least another year to get accustomed to it. Young replies that he understood everything while studying, but he nearly failed in controlling his magical energy. He had almost disrupted the balance between the energy source and its pathways. His aunt tells him that all he needs to do is allow the energy to flow naturally. Magical energy moves on its own, just like water, and in the end, their bodies are merely vessels that contain this power. She encourages him, expressing her confidence that he will eventually master it, even if it takes time. She has no doubt that he will succeed. She embraces him again, telling him how lucky she is to be training with him. Young tries to free himself, saying she is practically crushing his neck with her strength. She finally lets him go, but he gasps for air. She then tells him that they must begin training now so he can reach the 2nd star in magical energy control. She asks him if he knows that the first star he has achieved now is different from an ordinary star. Young replies that he is already aware of that. His aunt then asks him what skill he believes he excels at the most. He takes a moment to think, then answers that swordsmanship is likely his greatest strength. His aunt responds in shock, saying that she does not believe swordsmanship is his greatest strength. Young is surprised by her statement, insisting that she has seen him use sword techniques. She clarifies that while he is indeed skilled in swordsmanship, she sees a talent in him that surpasses even that. His greatest ability, she explains, is his mastery of magic. His magical capabilities are beyond comprehension, far superior to any other skill he possesses, to the extent that any other talent pales in comparison. She adds that she has personally tried training others in the magic she developed, but no one has ever accomplished what he has. Young is astonished by her words, especially since, before he turned back time, he was constantly criticized for his magical abilities. His aunt continues, saying that for someone like him, attaining the 2nd star should not be a challenge. If he succeeds, then the naming ceremony will be incredibly easy for him. From now on, she will be teaching him real techniques, so he needs to pay close attention and focus in order to progress quickly. Young assures her that he will follow her instructions exactly, but he also wants to know what the object beside her is. His aunt laughs, explaining that it will be used in their training. Then, without warning, she hurls something at him with great speed and force, scratching his face. She tells him that these are iron spheres. She emphasizes that he must be able to release magical energy while in motion. After all, any magical technique that is performed while standing still is nothing more than dead magic. Now, it is time to begin training for the naming ceremony. Young forces a smile, fully aware of the grueling training that awaits him. During the next training session for the naming ceremony, the leader of the Blood Tiger Corps, Lee Jungkwan, introduces himself, announcing that he will now be training the children of the Songmo Lee clan. He then instructs Young and Hua Li to choose the weapon they wish to use and bring it within 1 minute. Young and Hua move to comply, but Young notices that she keeps glancing at him. He asks if she has a problem with him. Hua hesitates, then denies it, insisting that she wants nothing from him. She then asks if he also uses a sword. Young, walking ahead, replies that he does not. Hua responds by saying that, based on her previous observations, she is certain that he has skill in swordsmanship. Afterward, Young and Hua return to instructor Young, who questions Young about what he is doing. Young explains that he was gathering weapons. The instructor remarks that he only asked them to bring the weapons they would be using. Young replies that these are in fact the weapons he will be using. The instructor eyes him with suspicion, commenting that he had thought Young was a smart student, but now he sees that he is completely foolish. He then instructs him to remember his words carefully, stating that he will teach them vision, but will not impart any specific techniques or stances. He explains that the Songmo Lee clan has many secrets known as the Oi, hidden techniques. To master these techniques, they must first awaken the sixth sense that lies dormant in their blood. From now on, his role will be to help them awaken their senses, so they should not make his job any harder than it already is. Young and Hua stand tensely, unsure of what instructor Young is about to do. But suddenly he attacks them, warning that they must not lose consciousness from the very beginning and stressing that they must focus immediately. He then delivers a powerful strike at Young, sending him flying, but Young quickly attempts to defend himself and block the blow. The instructor observes Young's reaction and is impressed by his quick reflexes and ability to counter the attack despite the sudden assault. Young, meanwhile, is astonished that the instructor resorted to such an extreme approach right from the start. He braces himself for the instructor's next move, recalling that in his previous life he never received proper training. But this time, things are entirely different, and he must prove himself. Young charges forward, launching an attack on instructor Young. However, Young is also struck by Commander Zhang, and Li Hua tries to take advantage of his distraction while facing Young to attack him. But he quickly turns towards her and strikes with his spear. A whole month passes since their training began with Commander Zhang, and Young comments that they are undergoing such intense training that it feels like their bones are breaking and they are suffering internal injuries. Yet he smiles as he tries to stand up, saying that this is not the kind of training a 10-year-old should endure, but he won't complain. He's starting to adapt to these harsh drills. Then the focus shifts to Li Hua, who had lost consciousness, but is now waking up. She asks Young what happened to her, and he tells her that she fainted for the 20th time, while he himself has only passed out 16 times. At that moment, Commander Zhang comments that Li Hua has an incredibly strong body, having endured severe blows without suffering any serious injuries, not even once. As for Young, he has been feeling something strange since the first day of training. Initially, he thought he was just a foolish kid when he saw him carrying so many weapons, but the real surprise was that he could wield them all skillfully. With excitement, he smiles and remarks that only a month has passed, yet he is already growing accustomed to this training. Then Commander Zhang calls out to Young and Li Hua, informing them that their training will continue. At that moment, he orders them to return to their positions, and the training resumes. However, exhaustion is evident on both of them. Young calls out to Li Hua, and she turns to him irritated, asking what he wants. He tells her that he will give her a signal, and all he asks is for her to block just one of Commander Zhang's attacks on his behalf. She questions why she should do that, to which he responds in a way that annoys her, saying she is not obligated, but he simply wanted to land a good strike on Commander Zhang for the first time. Deciding to assist him, Li Hua asks if he is sure about his plan. He confidently replies that he is absolutely certain. She then moves swiftly towards Commander Zhang, while Young follows behind her, thinking to himself that he has no chance of victory with his current skill level. He realizes that his only option is to take advantage of their numerical superiority. Commander Zhang notices that they have launched a synchronized attack and remarks that it's not a bad decision. He dodges Li Hua's strike and tells her that if her plan were going smoothly, she should have been able to block his counterattack, but she utterly fails to do so. Immediately after, Commander Zhang rushes toward Young with incredible speed. Young manages to block the attack, causing the commander's spear to be pushed backward. He then calls out to Li Hua, urging her to attack now. As she strikes from above, Young retreats without Commander Zhang noticing. Then he throws his spear aside, grabs his sword instead, and declares that there is only one way to execute a proper strike against the commander at this moment. That is by using the ultimate technique of the Mujin Infinite Dagger, known as Demon Slayer. Commander Zhang senses imminent danger as Young approaches, but he successfully blocks the sword strike. However, that was not all Young had in store, as he gathers his strength for another attack. He then unleashes a powerful blow, feeling triumphant as his strike lands on the commander. But to his shock, he realizes that Commander Zhang blocked it with his bare hand. Following that, Young is sent flying and crashes into the wall from the sheer force of the commander's attack. Commander Zhang then informs him that 37 days have passed since their training began. Clapping his hands, he tells Young that he has managed to awaken his sixth sense. At that moment, Li Hua attempts to attack him, but he lands a direct hit on her. He then tells them that they still have a long way to go before reaching the required level. Before leaving, while they both lie on the ground completely exhausted, he informs them that today's training is over. Li Hua feels deeply frustrated with Young and tells him that she trusted his plan, but Commander Zhang pays no attention to their argument. His focus is entirely on the injury to his hand caused by Young's attack. He remarks that he used mana, yet Young still managed to injure him. Even though he used only a minimal amount, it still meant he had broken his own rule of not using it. He then adds that Young possesses a keen combat intuition, allowing him to know when to abandon an attack if it's the best option. Expressing his excitement, he says that the family's elders will fear him in the future. On the 47th day, Li Hua awakens her sixth sense, and afterward, both of them graduate from Commander Zhang's training. Young takes advantage of the remaining days to rest and review everything he has learned during this period. That is until his older brother, Myung, arrives. Myung is the eldest son of Li Taixin and is known as the Twin Stars because he is both a 2-star ranked mage and a martial artist of the same rank. He has earned admiration and fear in equal measure, yet to Young, he is simply his only brother. The two sit together and Myung apologizes to Young for not giving him enough attention as an older brother due to his overwhelming responsibilities. Young responds that there is no need to apologize. Myung then smiles and jokingly says that although this is their first time meeting, he feels like he got to know him very quickly. Young replies, saying that even if he is his half-brother, there is no way he wouldn't recognize his elder brother's face. However, Myung is displeased by the term half-brother and asks Young not to say such things again. He insists that, although they have different mothers, he sees no difference between him and his other siblings from the same mother. He then reflects to himself that Young has yet to attend his naming ceremony, but seems to be overly harsh on himself. At that moment, Young apologizes and promises not to say it again. Myung responds that there is no need to be so formal. After all, he is his brother. Young smiles at him, thinking to himself that his brother had always been kind to him since childhood. Then, Myung takes something out of his pocket and tells Young that it is a gift for their first meeting. He explains that he acquired it while at the France University of Mages. He believes Young will benefit more from it, as it is a miraculous medicinal elixir known as Ruler's Wine. Young is overjoyed with the gift and exclaims that only 500 milliliters of this elixir are produced annually at the France University of Mages. He then thanks his brother warmly, but Myung senses something strange. He tells Young that he seems a little different, prompting Young to ask what he means. Myung laughs and says that all the siblings he has met so far have viewed him as a rival, but he is glad that Young is different, though it's something he isn't used to. However, Young surprises him by saying that what he just said is not true. He adds that as long as he is a member of the Li family, he must be seen as a competitor. Then, with a cheerful smile, he tells Myung not to think of him as his sweet little brother, as no one knows how he will grow. He may even become his greatest rival someday. He hopes to be a worthy opponent for him. Myung bursts into hearty laughter, then approaches Young and places a hand on his head, saying that he looks forward to the day Young becomes his strongest rival. Young gazes at him happily, thinking to himself that his older brother had always cared for him the most, and for that reason this time, he would make sure to protect him. A few days later, the time finally arrives for the second trial of the Li family, the naming ceremony. Young and Li Hua head to the Blue and Red Island, a place where the color of the land shifts according to the amount of mana in the atmosphere. This island has been the site of the Li family's naming ceremony for generations. The guard accompanying Young and Li Hua informs them that he will explain all the details they need to know about the naming ceremony. He emphasizes that they must live on the island for 3 weeks to prove their abilities. He then hands them devices, explaining that they must wear them at all times so that their locations on the island can always be tracked. He instructs them to keep the devices on at all times, then adds that the test chamber will open 2 days after the 3-week period ends. After that, he drops them off on the island, wishing them good luck before leaving. Shortly after, Li Hua calls out to Young, saying she wants to tell him something. He responds that she has finally made up her mind, but she looks confused, as she hasn't said anything yet. He tells her that he knows she has been trying to tell him something since they were training together. Li Hua becomes extremely flustered and asks how he knew. Young gives her a strange look, wondering to himself how he could possibly not have noticed something so obvious. He then urges her to say whatever she wants, assuring her that he will at least listen. Li Hua places her hand in her pocket but hesitates, prompting Young to ask what's wrong. She then pulls out a small bottle and tells him that what's inside is poison. She explains that it is only effective on children under the age of 15 and evaporates if exposed to air for more than 5 minutes. She also mentions that the poison causes long-term damage to a person's mana pathways. Young immediately asks who gave her this poison, but she simply replies that she obviously won't tell him, then throws the bottle onto the ground. She then tells him that there is no longer any evidence of anything, and that she will face him fairly and honorably, without resorting to using such poison. Young is shocked by her words, but she continues, saying that she wants him to take the test seriously. Young smirks at her in defiance, assuring her that even if she hadn't said that, he would still give his all in the test. Li Hua then picks up her bag and asks if he has all the tools he needs. She stresses the importance of heading to the center of the island once he gets used to its terrain. As she has heard, that place is extremely dangerous. Young responds indifferently, assuring her that he is aware of that, then asks if she's worried about him. She scoffs, saying that there's no way she'd be worried about him, and that the only thing she fears is that he might die before settling things between them. Then, suddenly, they hear a loud sound that makes them uneasy. Li Hua repeats her words, urging Young not to die no matter what happens, then walks ahead of him. Young watches her as she leaves and recalls telling her before that the place he was heading to was not merely the outskirts of the island. Then, with excitement, he declares that the time has finally come to go to the center of the island. Meanwhile, the family elders observe them from a distance, commenting that Li Hua has performed exceptionally well, just as they expected. They note that she has already completed the required monster hunts. They also remark that despite this being her first real combat test, she has slain a large number of creatures. One of the elders then states that nothing less was expected of her, and that there is no possibility that she is unqualified. He then asks the elderly Commander Zhang how long it took Li Hua to awaken her sixth sense. Commander Zhang replies that she achieved it in just 57 days. The elder responds that this was unexpected, as she was supposed to need a full 2 months to complete the awakening process. However, he silently acknowledges that she possesses extraordinary talent, but also that someone had helped her develop at a much faster pace. That person was none other than Young, the 9th son. The elder then asks about Young's current situation. Commander Zhang replies that Young appears to be searching for a place to set up a hiding spot. This angers the family elders, who believe that he has chosen to run away like a coward. They question how someone from the Li family's bloodline could act so disgracefully. Myung interrupts them, explaining that trying to find a hiding spot in such a dangerous place is a strategic move, not something to be condemned. However, the family elders scoff at him, stating that while his words are correct, it seems they have set their expectations too high because of Li Hua's performance. The elder then comments that being an ordinary person within the Li family is the greatest sin. They continue mocking Young, saying that he is merely doing things that anyone could accomplish, something unworthy of a member of the Li family. This enrages Myung. He retorts indignantly, questioning when his family became so heartless as to scorn a child merely because of his origins. At the same time, he appears puzzled, as he cannot understand why Young is heading toward the center of the island. He then realizes that he is not the only one unaware of Young's intentions. Even his uncle, Hong, seems nervous about it. The scene shifts back to Young, who finally finds a suitable location for himself. He burns some natural herbs to ward off insects and reptiles, then seals the entrance with tree leaves. The family elders acknowledge his exceptional stealth skills, but the elder is left in shock by what Young does next. He removes the tracking device from his wrist, places it on the ground, and covers it with some herbs to hide it completely. Commander Zhang laughs, remarking that no one can predict what Young will do next. Meanwhile, Young tells himself that there is no reason to let them track his movements. He then adds that he can now use the Mujin Infinite Dagger however he pleases. Since he is currently on the island, he must gather as much as possible. With that thought, he eagerly sets off. After collecting a large amount of herbs and cooking them, he grumbles in frustration, saying that wild herbs are the worst thing ever. He notes that anyone looking at them would assume they were nothing more than water infused with a magical herb, As he stares at his meal, he recalls memories of his past life, when he didn't have enough money to afford even a cheap elixir. This had forced him to follow herb collectors and pharmacists, searching for magical herbs. He remembers the words of his aunt, Lee Kyung, who told him that the island was filled with magic and that he should seize this opportunity to enhance his power through magical techniques. She explained that preparing a soup from magical herbs would amplify his magical abilities, which is why he decided to try it himself. After finishing the entire bowl of soup, he feels as if he is about to die from its awful taste, but he declares that this is only the beginning of the battle, which will last for 3 weeks. 18 days after the naming ceremony began, the scene shifts to Myung's office, where he is immersed in his work until someone knocks on the door. The visitor apologizes for interrupting him, to which Myung replies that his face already makes it clear that he brings bad news. The visitor is Jang Hon, Myung's assistant, who informs him that a large group of nomads has crossed into South Korean territory. He explains that he initially believed they would move through hidden routes, but instead, they entered directly into the south and are now only 2 days away from the Lee family's magical stone mines. Myung responds that these nomads are a dangerous group of criminals who commit the worst atrocities, emphasizing that they cannot be allowed to enter the family's land under any circumstances. Jang Hon then tells him that while they may appear to be ordinary nomads, he is certain that some unknown force is orchestrating their movements from behind the scenes. He also adds that there is additional intelligence indicating that Young Chi has mobilized his forces toward the northern border. Young Chi is the dominant power in Jongwon, a region they share with the Song family, and they have always exploited this to launch assaults on their territory. Myung realizes that the news of his father leaving the main house has leaked, making this the perfect time for their adversaries to make their move. He then asks Jang Hon whether the family's intelligence division is aware of this information. Jang Hon replies that he managed to obtain it before they did because he had been specifically assigned to monitor the situation at Myung's request. In the end, Myung instructs Jang Hon to collaborate with the intelligence division to gather more information. He adds that it feels as if something else is unfolding behind the scenes, hoping that it is nothing more than just a hunch. The scene shifts to a location within the island, where a glowing magical circle is active. From within it, a figure emerges, muttering mockingly that 2 days are more than enough to kill an illegitimate child. The scene then transitions to Young, who is engaged in a fierce battle against a dragon-blooded beast of the 7th level, known as Draco. Draco unleashes a massive wave of fire toward Young, but he swiftly dodges and immediately launches a counterattack. He then uses the Demon Slayer technique against Draco, delivering a fatal blow that ends its life. Standing still for a moment, Young reflects on the sheer difference in power that dragon-blooded beasts possess. He admits that if he had faced Draco upon arriving on the island, he would have died instantly. He also notes that it took him 19 days to reach the dragon's nest, but he realizes that staying here any longer would be a waste of time. As he walks away, he mentions that there is another reason why he came to this place. Suddenly, Young drops low to the ground upon hearing a sound coming from the forest. He mutters to himself that his suspicions have been confirmed. The lizard men have appeared. However, something has felt off since yesterday. The lizard men are supposed to stay at the outskirts of the island, yet they are now in the center. What's more, they are attacking with intelligence. This is highly unusual, as these creatures are known for their low intelligence and weak combat capabilities. He wonders if an external factor has influenced their behavior. To confirm his theory, he deliberately cuts down several trees, creating a loud noise. As soon as the lizard men hear it, they become terrified and flee immediately. Young smirks, stating that his suspicions were correct. Something is definitely happening. He then charges at them, swiftly eliminating them all except for one, whom he decides to follow to discover its destination. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the man who arrived on the island with Young and Li Hua, instructor Nishiyama. He mutters sarcastically that the members of the Li family are truly bizarre. He wonders how a mere child like Young could slaughter so many beasts on his own. However, despite all his skills, Young is still just a child, and soon enough he will fall into an obvious trap. Confidently, he adds that he is certain he won't have to resort to his backup plan. From a distance, Young observes the situation, noting that everything seems so blatantly obvious that he begins to doubt whether it is really just a trap. But his doubts turn out to be justified. He quickly realizes that instructor Nishiyama is actually a beast tamer. However, he questions how someone from outside the family was able to enter the island. It should have been impossible, unless there was a magical circle within the island that was used for entry. With a smirk, Young scoffs, saying that if his guess is correct, then someone within the family must have orchestrated this. He hesitates, debating whether to inform the family and wait for reinforcements. However, he quickly dismisses the idea, realizing that by the time help arrives, it will be too late. Moreover, he wouldn't be able to uncover any information about the mastermind behind this scheme. As a result, he determines that he has only one option left. He activates his stealth ability. He decides to use this technique to completely erase his presence, allowing him to approach Nishiyama undetected and kill him personally. The moment Young strikes at instructor Nishiyama, who is holding a strange bird, the bird immediately begins emitting an unusual sound. This alerts Nishiyama to the presence of someone behind him. Young then realizes that the bird is actually a detection tool designed to sense nearby threats. This prevents him from landing a lethal strike, giving Nishiyama enough time to block the attack. Nishiyama gazes at Young in astonishment, impressed by his abilities. He remarks that he never expected an illegitimate child to be this powerful, admitting that Young has exceeded all his expectations. However, Young retorts sarcastically, stating that the problem isn't his own strength, it's his opponent's overwhelming weakness. Infuriated by Young's provocation, Nishiyama commands his beasts to attack. But Young counters them using the 7-star sword technique, third form, effortlessly annihilating them. Just as he thinks he has gained the upper hand, he is suddenly caught off guard when chains wrap around his sword, preventing him from continuing his assault. Young quickly realizes that the cause of his predicament is none other than Nishiyama, who laughs maliciously, declaring that Young has fallen into his trap completely. He then reveals that this technique is one of the most powerful methods to completely prevent warriors from using their magical energy. With a mocking tone, he adds that without magic, Young is nothing more than a weak child, and resistance is now futile. However, Young responds with confidence, saying that since his magical energy has been blocked, he has no choice but to use another technique, one that allows him to restore and replenish his mana flow at a speed far beyond the effect of Nishiyama's petty trick. Indeed, Young successfully breaks free from the chains that had bound him and lunges at instructor Nishiyama. Upon noticing the shock on his opponent's face, Young smirks and sarcastically asks if he has given up on the idea of running away or if he still intends to flee. Nishiyama, flustered, demands to know how Young managed to break through the barrier. Young coldly replies that he has no reason to explain anything, especially since his movements have already been reported to the clan. Resistance is futile at this point, so Nishiyama might as well surrender. Yet, Nishiyama smirks deviously, saying that it doesn't matter to him. All he wants is to eliminate Young and reclaim his freedom. Young is puzzled by his words and asks him to explain what he means. But before he can react, a massive figure appears behind him and delivers a devastating strike. The force of the blow sends Young crashing into a tree, causing severe injuries. He collapses to the ground, struggling to regain consciousness. As he lifts his head, he is met with an overwhelming shock. Standing before him is none other than the colossal beast, the ruler of Gyeongsang province, a towering phantom beast of the mountains. It is a third-tier nightmare-class creature, making it impossible for a mere beast tamer like Nishiyama to have full control over it. Nishiyama turns to Young and sneers, stating that he has finally understood the situation. Though the taming process is not yet complete, there is one command the beast will obey without hesitation: kill. He advises Young to stop struggling. Resistance is meaningless, and he should accept his fate. Thinking quickly, Young realizes that he must remain calm. Since the mountain beast is not yet fully under Nishiyama's control, his best option is to eliminate the treacherous beast tamer first. However, to stand a chance against the phantom beast, he has only one option left, one that he can hardly believe he is being forced to use. He takes out a pill, an illegal stimulant known for its immense risks, far outweighing the boost in magical energy it provides. The moment he swallows it, he feels an overwhelming surge of mana coursing through his body, his power rising exponentially. But in the back of his mind, he remembers a technique his aunt once warned him about, one he should only use in absolute life-threatening situations. Yet, Young knows this is the moment to use it. He begins amplifying his mana flow, then launches a direct attack on the mountain beast. However, its incredibly tough hide makes it barely flinch. Undeterred, he strikes again, and this time, he senses that he is getting closer to taking it down completely. But suddenly, the mountain beast lets out a thunderous roar, unleashing a surge of magical energy. The energy field restricts Young's movements, preventing him from advancing. However, his dark energy reacts to it, forcing him out of the beast's range and giving him a new opportunity to shift the tide of battle. Seizing the moment, Young charges toward the beast once more, unleashing the Black Storm technique, followed by the demon-slaying Chuma sword technique. He delivers a swift and decisive strike straight at the mountain beast. At last, the creature collapses, letting out a final earth-shaking roar before falling lifeless under Young's finishing blow. But Young falls as well. The drug's side effects begin to manifest, and he realizes that he has no time to waste. The mana-enhancing technique, combined with the Heaven's Core technique, is consuming his body at an alarming rate. He cannot endure it much longer. He has only 10 seconds left, and since the mountain beast missed its last attack, this is his only chance to reach the beast tamer. As time ticks away, Young rushes toward Nishiyama, when suddenly he notices a faint red thread extending in front of him. He follows it, tracking it back to the beast tamer's exact location. The moment Nishiyama sees Young approaching, his expression shifts to pure shock. He cannot believe that Young has found him this quickly. At the last second, Young attempts to land a fatal blow on Nishiyama, but time is not on his side, and his strike falls just short. He needs only a few more centimeters to end it, forcing him to extend his reach quickly before his body completely gives out. With precise control, Young successfully extends his sword and slices through Nishiyama in the blink of an eye, displaying remarkable skill. However, he collapses immediately afterward, gasping for breath. Now it is crucial for him to tend to his body. If he loses consciousness here, it could mean his end. He pulls out a small vial from his pocket, a medicine his aunt had instructed him to drink immediately after using the Heaven's Core technique. Young begins to drink, but despite that, he still cannot feel his body, and soon he collapses to the ground, desperately trying to stay conscious before the monsters reach him. When Young opens his eyes, he finds himself in a vast, pure white space, unable to determine his exact location. Panic suddenly grips him, and he attempts to get up as memories of the beast tamer and the monsters flood his mind. However, he soon discovers that his body refuses to move, as if it has been shattered into countless pieces. At that moment, a strange voice speaks to him. The voice expresses its astonishment that Young has made it this far, stating that these matters are so perilous that humans cannot even comprehend them. It then questions how two separate entities could merge within one body in such a manner. The voice continues, saying that it had hoped Young would never awaken, as that would have made things easier. But now there is no other choice. It commands him to consume that thing. Young focuses on the object in front of him and is stunned to see that it is a purple hive stone. He is immediately shaken, realizing that this means it is none other than the legendary purple hive core. The voice corrects him, saying that it is not what he thinks. It is not the voice that must be consumed, but rather he must consume the stone, for the covenant has already begun. It tells him that he must grow stronger from now on, so that time itself does not devour him. At that moment, Young realizes that the voice belongs to none other than the mountain beast he had just fought. Before it vanishes completely, it leaves behind those final words. Young awakens to find Hua standing before him, scolding him for addressing her without honorifics. She reminds him that she is his elder sister. However, she decides to let it slide this time, considering his injuries. She then asks if he is feeling any better. Young examines his internal condition and discovers that his muscular and skeletal systems have been completely wrecked. However, his magical energy has increased exponentially, confirming that what he saw was real. He had indeed consumed the purple hive core. Young responds to Hua, stating that his mana pathways have been torn, his internal organs have suffered some damage, and there are fractures in his bones as well as muscle ruptures. However, nothing is severely life-threatening. As he reflects on it, Young realizes that the purple hive core was supposed to belong to Hua. It is a miraculous elixir that enhances the body and increases magical energy, while also granting immunity to poisons and curses. It was something he had long wished to obtain in his past life from Gyeongchung Island. Yet now that he has acquired it, he feels a twinge of guilt. He then asks Hua why she is here. Before she can answer, they are suddenly interrupted by their eldest brother, Mayung, who arrives and asks Young if he is feeling better or if he requires magical treatment. He hands him a magical potion to aid in his recovery, but Young tells him that he does not need magical treatment, though he decides to drink the potion anyway. As Young slowly sips the medicine, their older brother Kyung watches with a sorrowful expression. He then asks Hua to leave them alone for a moment. She agrees and tells them to call her when they are finished. Myung then tells his younger brother that if anything had happened to him, he would have wiped out any entity or organization linked to that beast tamer, regardless of their identity or strength. Young is deeply moved by his brother's words and expresses his gratitude. Myung continues, saying that as a member of the Songmo Lee clan, Young is a role model among warriors. However, as his older brother, he cannot see things in such a positive light, because what Young did was nothing short of reckless. Young replies that he had never anticipated the appearance of the mountain beast. Had he known, he would have waited for them. He apologizes for his recklessness, and Myung tells him that he must learn to differentiate between confidence and brashness. At that moment, Young states that since he has dealt with the beast tamer, the ownership of the information should now return to him as well. Myung responds, saying that he knew Young would say that. He then begins to explain the details of what happened, revealing that instructor Nishiyama was a fifth-tier mage from Japan's Yin-Yang school. However, he was expelled for attempting to use forbidden magic. Most likely, the people who orchestrated this incident activated advanced spells and magical artifacts while the mountain beast was asleep. Their goal was to eliminate Young by manipulating the beasts. Young then asks if that means they still haven't identified the mastermind behind the attack. Myung replies that the beast tamer is now on the brink of death, making it nearly impossible to extract any information from him. Hearing this, Young is taken aback. He then remarks that the true target of this incident wasn't him. It was actually his older brother, Myung. Myung asks what led him to that conclusion. Younger explains that the infiltrators managed to enter undetected, and the response to their presence was deliberately slow. This suggests that the goal was to tarnish Myung's reputation. Myung confirms that Young's deduction is correct, then instructs him to act as if he knows nothing about the situation. Younger asks if there's anything else, but Myung reassures him that he's fine and has only sustained minor scratches. However, he cannot stay away from his position for too long, or chaos will ensue. Young grabs his brother's hand and proposes a deal. Myung raises an eyebrow, asking what the terms are. Younger states that he will report that he was the one who discovered the beast tamer's infiltration and that he had given prior orders to his brother. He will testify accordingly. Young wants to solidify this narrative so that it appears as though he uncovered something even the family's intelligence division failed to detect. Myung responds that it would be better to tell the truth for Young's own good. However, Young clarifies that if he admits to acting alone, hostility toward him will only increase, and others will become more wary of him, without anyone benefiting from it. Understanding the logic behind his brother's plan, Myung realizes that this deal is a mutually beneficial exchange. He then asks what Young wants in return. Younger requests permission to enter the Hall of Prominent Manuscripts for 3 days, saying that it will be more than enough time for him. Myung scoffs, calling him an opportunist, but ultimately agrees to the deal. They shake hands and Myung expresses his appreciation for Young's proposal. Young simply responds that there's no need for thanks. It's just a deal after all. Myung then comments that he had no doubt Young had already devised a plan to handle the situation, even in his absence. But their conversation is suddenly interrupted by the vibrations of Myung's phone. He glances at it and tells Young that the summons is definitely from the Blue Sword Squad, meaning he must leave immediately. Before departing, he tosses Young the Mujin dagger and tells him that he will keep this matter a secret and won't tell anyone about it. Younger laughs, saying that just as he expected, his older brother was never naive. After Myung leaves, Hwa returns and asks Young if his conversation with his brother ended peacefully. Young replies that everything went fine. She then asks him which hall he plans to choose, reminding him that 3 weeks have passed and the halls should now be open. Younger replies that she should be the one to choose first if she wants an answer from him. Hwa confidently states that she will definitely enter the Hall of Shadows, the most difficult one. She then asks which hall he will choose. Younger replies that he will go to the Hall of Struggle. Surprised, Hwa asks if such a hall even exists and whether it is located on the outskirts. Young confirms that it is indeed on the outskirts. Feeling disappointed, Hwa assumes she had misjudged him. She sees no reason to continue their conversation now that she believes he has chosen a fringe hall. She reflects that she had once thought of him as a rival, perhaps even superior to her. However, despite knowing that a hall's difficulty is determined by its location, he still chose an obscure one. Young watches her leave, making no attempt to correct her misunderstanding. At the break of dawn, Young sets off on his path, struggling to recall the exact location, but pressing forward based on his memory. At the end of this road, he is supposed to find a hidden cave, the site where he will undergo the second trial of the naming ceremony. At first, the area appears to be nothing more than an ordinary rock wall, but it is far from ordinary. Young unsheathes his sword and shatters the stone barrier, revealing a massive iron gate hidden behind it. With that, Young has finally arrived at his destination, the entrance to the Hall of Struggle. Young uses the Mujin dagger to make a cut on his palm, then sprinkles the blood from the wound onto the door, which immediately opens as soon as he does so, allowing him to enter the vast space that resembles an abandoned palace, until he reaches the center of the hall, where he places his hand in an iron vessel and declares himself a descendant of the Songmu Li clan, seeking to take the test and requesting permission from the place to proceed. Fully aware of what lies ahead, he is about to undergo the Coffin of Struggle trial, a test that can only be overcome by defeating oneself in battle, with an unlimited number of attempts. Yet he cannot leave unless he emerges victorious, even if he surrenders or loses the ability to fight. And just as Young takes his first step, his duplicate suddenly launches a surprise attack and slashes his throat, leaving him in shock, thinking that what just happened was real, only to realize that his neck remains intact, unharmed. And although he distinctly felt his throat being cut when the duplicate struck, he understands that it was merely an illusion, as death within the trial hall is impossible. Yet the sensation was so realistic that it could drive any ordinary person insane if experienced repeatedly. But Young wonders if this means he is also capable of reaching the same level of power as his duplicate, since the illusion of the hall utilizes his abilities at full capacity, implying that he has yet to reach such perfection. For if he had attained mastery over his skills, he would have been able to block the strike moments ago. So he resolves to try again, prepared to take on the challenge once more, only to meet the same fate, continuously dying over and over due to his repeated losses against his duplicate. And although in his fifth attempt, he finally manages to block the sword, he still meets his end as his neck is snapped, and the cycle repeats in the 10th, 11th, and even the 20th attempts, as he persists, without giving up despite dying each time, until the battle begins to intensify between him and his duplicate, and he starts keeping up with its attacks to some extent, which happens around his 75th or 80th attempt, at which point he feels that he is finally beginning to understand and might actually achieve victory, realizing that his greatest strength lies in his freedom to use magical energy, a freedom that makes his movements unpredictable, thanks to possessing the infinitely morphing dagger, Mujin. And so he decides that this time, he will definitely succeed in defeating his duplicate, and the more he fights it, the more their combat styles resemble each other, until the duplicate suddenly launches a surprise attack, successfully stabbing him in the abdomen. But it is caught off guard when Young tells it that it is far too naive and that he deliberately left an opening in his defense. Then he locks the duplicate's hand in place, preventing it from moving, and prepares to deliver a decisive strike, utilizing the Demon Slayer Cheonma technique, finally managing to defeat it for the first time, causing the illusionary duplicate to vanish as Young successfully eliminates it after 80 failed attempts. Knowing that overcoming this trial activates the dormant abilities within the bloodline of the Songmu Li clan, and in his previous life, the ability he possessed was the most common one, enhancement. But he now feels curious to see if the outcome will be the same this time, only to be surprised by the discovery of a power he never knew he had. Meanwhile, outside at the trial's gate, the members of the clan are waiting for Young to emerge from the hall, with Uncle Hong present among them, visibly distressed, commenting that he had anticipated the enemy's appearance during this period. Yet he questioned in frustration why the damned enemy had chosen this day in particular, the day of the naming ceremony, when the situation was supposed to be stable, only to be interrupted by one of the attendees who reports a shift in the density of magical energy. The gate had already begun to open, and Young emerged under the watchful eyes of everyone. Uncle Hong hurried toward him, noticing that Young appeared unsteady and extremely exhausted. As soon as he reached him, he caught him before he could collapse, realizing that his breathing was incredibly slow. Young struggled to gather his words and asked for water and food, his exhaustion evident. Uncle Hong looked at him with concern, fearing that he had suffered something serious. Then, he scolded him loudly, chastising him for the unnecessary worry he had caused them, comparing him to a cat with 9 lives. Young returned home, where his caretaker welcomed him with tears of joy. She embraced him and told him how worried she had been, especially after learning that a beast tamer in the mountains had confronted him, in addition to his participation in the ancestral test. Young replied that he felt disgusted with himself, having spent nearly a month away from home without bathing. The caretaker told him she had intended to scold him harshly, but for now, she was simply happy that he was back. She had prepared a warm bath for him, and once he finished, food would be ready immediately. Young took his clothes and headed toward the bath, but first, he asked the caretaker about his aunt, expecting her to be around. The caretaker led him to the place where his aunt was being held, and he asked why she had been confined. She answered with regret but expressed her relief that he was safe, then inquired about what exactly he had done to cause such a dramatic surge in his energy, especially since he had previously been unable to absorb energy into his body. Young interrupted her, asking seriously about the truth of the matter. She appeared flustered and told him that nothing of significance had happened, that it was just a normal occurrence. However, Young found it hard to believe that his aunt had done all of this for him. The reason for her confinement was that she had caused an uproar in the judgment hall, challenging the elders and his older brother, accusing them of always remaining the same and endangering everyone around them. Aunt Kyung told Young that she was sorry, but she couldn't control herself when she thought they might have harmed him, and she had been overwhelmed with rage at the possibility of never seeing her disciple, her little boy, again. At that moment, Young realized he had never fully trusted his aunt before, but now he felt that she was truly part of his family. He assured her that he would try to get her out soon, but she asked him not to trouble himself with it. He responded that, in any case, she would be released soon. At the airport, members of Young's clan, Songmu Lee, were waiting for the arrival of the clan leader's plane. As soon as the aircraft's door opened, Patriarch Song Ja Lee stepped out to greet them all. His mother, Baek, stepped forward to welcome him, telling him that she had prepared a warm bath and a meal for him so he could relax and enjoy a peaceful dinner. The patriarch thanked her and continued walking, with Young and Hua watching the scene unfold. At that moment, Young had a strong sense that he had grown significantly stronger after the naming test incident, but he now fully grasped the vast gap in power between himself and his father. Clan leader Ja Li remarked that he had always believed that those who do not fight have no place in the clan. But despite that, there was only one person who seemed to have the spirit to challenge him. Young knew that the patriarch was referring to him, but the others didn't even consider him as a possibility, and instead began speculating about who the patriarch might have meant. In the banquet hall of the Songmu Lee clan, the naming ceremony was underway. Young stood in one of the corners, aware that the clan did not frequently hold celebrations or events, which made this occasion particularly grand. It also gave him the chance to meet many attendees, including a figure known as the Master of the Magic Tower. Additionally, the head or deputy of the Yin-Yang division was also present. During the gathering, a servant approached Young and informed him that his father was summoning him, requesting that he follow. Young was astonished when his father summoned him personally, feeling a sense of unease that it might be for a serious discussion. Upon arriving at the location where his father was, he greeted him and asked if he had indeed called for him. However, he was surprised to find that his father was not alone. His older brother Myung was also present. Clan leader Ja Li began speaking, telling Young that he undoubtedly knew the reason for his summons. He explained that, based on Myung's account of the naming ceremony, he had personally detected the intruder and apprehended him. He then asked Young if he was the one who reported the matter and ordered the arrest of the intruder. Young remained silent for a while, as he had already expected that his father knew everything and that nothing could be hidden from him. He then admitted that his father was correct, confirming that he had made the proposal to his older brother with the condition of gaining access to the old book hall for 3 days, in exchange for protection from any negative consequences resulting from the incident. At that moment, his father responded by saying that he would overlook the false report this time due to Young's contribution to the matter, but he would not tolerate such actions again. Young apologized for his actions and assured him that he understood. The father then turned to Myung, informing him that he would face an appropriate punishment later and that the responsibility for the banquet was now his. After that, clan leader Ja Li continued speaking with Young, telling him that, aside from lying to him, he had played a significant role in this matter, and therefore he could claim the reward that Myung had promised him. Additionally, given his discovery of the Coffin of Struggle, he would be granted a special reward of his own choosing. Young agreed and decided to take advantage of the opportunity to request the reward he desired. Then, clan leader Ja Li returned to the celebration and thanked all the attendees who had traveled from afar, wishing them blessings. Through the 2 children who were the focus of the banquet, before officially announcing the commencement of the naming ceremony. The leader first called for Hua Li to step forward and receive her new name. He informed her that she had been chosen by the heavenly sword, which constantly radiated bright energy around her. And since she walked the path of light without hesitation, she was granted the name So-hyun, meaning blessed radiance, ensuring that her path would always remain bright. Overjoyed, Hua Li expressed her gratitude to the leader for the name. After that, Young was called forward to begin his own naming ceremony. The clan leader told him that he was strong yet sharp, resilient yet unyielding. Just as a blacksmith refines raw iron into a durable blade, Young had tempered himself for a long time, making no word more fitting for him than this. Thus, he was given the name Cheol, meaning iron. At that moment, Young recalled that he had been given this name in the past, so that he would live as solid as iron. But he now realized that the meaning had changed. This became a driving force for him to continue striving relentlessly until he reached the pinnacle of Songmu Lee. Meanwhile, Aunt Kyung was bound and shouting angrily. She wanted to leave the place immediately, feeling suffocated, and voiced her frustration over not even being able to attend Young's naming ceremony. She kept yelling, demanding that the guards release her at once. Shortly afterward, the guards received orders to allow her to leave her confinement. They informed her that her punishment had been temporarily lifted and that she would be notified of her final sentence later. She quickly left the detention chamber, overwhelmed with joy. However, before she could get far, Young stopped her. She asked if he was the one who had secured her release, to which he confirmed that he was. She then inquired how he had done it. At that moment, Young handed her a piece of paper. She asked him what it contained, and he responded by telling her that she was now indebted to him. She began reading the contents of the paper, and as she reached the part stating that she had been officially detained within the Ancient Council, she was stunned to see that Young had been assigned as her disciple. This was the reason for her release from imprisonment. Young smiles at her and tells her that he will be relying on her to teach him well. 3 years pass, and Young now wears his training uniform, while the caretaker looks saddened, saying she can't believe he has turned 13 so quickly. After preparing himself, Young smiles at her and tells her that he is leaving now. He then arrives at the Student Training Academy, stating that the time has finally come for him to begin his life as a student. Upon entering, the other students start talking about him, discussing the commotion he caused during the official recognition ceremony and the naming ceremony. Some describe him as lucky, but one of them responds that the performance he displayed at the naming ceremony couldn't have been mere luck, and that they are eager to see the skills Young possesses. Hearing all this, Young feels frustrated by the constant criticism directed at him. Then, Lihua arrives, and the students comment that she has a completely different aura from Young since she belongs to the main family. Young notices the stark contrast in their reactions compared to when he entered. Lihua then approaches him and greets him, to which he responds, saying it has been a long time. Feeling embarrassed, Lihua asks if he is still thinking about what happened during the naming ceremony. Young appears not to remember, so she reminds him that she was referring to what she said when she told him she was disappointed in him. He replies that he wasn't upset because he never thought about it at all, and Lihua visibly relaxes upon hearing that. She then tells him that it's a relief since she had thought he might have taken it too personally. Annoyed, he asks if she wants to go into detail about the sensitivity she is referring to. Lihua quickly changes the subject, telling him that she heard he started training under Aunt Li Kyung and also gained permission to enter the family library. However, before they can continue, the instructors arrive and call for the students' attention, announcing that they will now begin class assignments. Each student whose name is called must step forward and stand in their designated group in front of their instructor. The tension among the students is evident, while Young thinks that if he is placed in a weak class, it will be a disaster for him. He understands that the reason for the other students' anxiety is that the academy's training lasts for 3 years, so class assignments are of utmost importance. He then recalls that each year has 5 classes, and the more exceptional a student is, the higher their assigned class. Li Hua is placed in the first class. Young finds this completely expected, but then he hears his own name. He walks up to the instructor to receive his assignment paper and learn which class he has been placed in. As he steps down the stairs, he notices that the instructor cannot even hide his dissatisfaction. Young mutters that he expected some manipulation in the placements, but he hadn't thought they would be this blatantly ridiculous. He has been assigned to the 5th class, known as the garbage dump. Young notes that the direct descendants of the main family are supposed to be assigned based on their performance during the naming ceremony, with the evaluation conducted by the Educational Institute under the Senate, as well as the faction under Lady Beck. He then thinks to himself that they probably believe they have dealt him a major blow, but in reality, this situation works in his favor and saves him a lot of effort. Afterward, the instructor tells him where his class is located. Young responds that he already knows the location and will head there now. However, before leaving, he notices the red aura emanating from Li Hua, a sign of her intense anger. She thinks to herself that he should have at least protested against what happened, while Young realizes that if he does nothing, she might intervene herself. Yet, he considers it unimportant and proceeds with the rest of the students assigned to the 5th class, who continue grumbling, unsure of how they will explain this to their families. Then, one of the students approaches Young and asks if he is the youngest son of the main family. Young confirms that what he said is correct, prompting the boy to introduce himself as Kim Han, explaining that his father owns a small blacksmith workshop. He then expresses his great pride in being in the same class as Young. However, Young thinks to himself that he doesn't recall this name from his past life. He then asks Kim Han why he specifically chose to speak to him. Kim Han replies that Young is a well-known figure and also someone he looks up to. From the way he speaks, Young can tell that he isn't lying. He then asks Kim Han what he thinks about being placed in the 5th class. Kim Han laughs and says that it simply means his level matches that of the 5th class, nothing more. However, he quickly adds with excitement that no one knows what the future holds. Young responds by saying that he admires his way of thinking. After that, they meet the senior students, who welcome them warmly. Once the introductions are over, the instructor calls for their attention and asks them to focus on him for a moment. He then introduces himself, stating that his name is Lee Jung and that he will be the instructor for the 5th class. Since they have a new batch of students, they will begin with an introductory session instead of diving straight into lessons. Young thinks to himself that instructor Lee Jung is still filled with enthusiasm and determination. He is the same person who had trained him in his past life. After the instructor finishes explaining the essential information to the students, he calls on one of the older students named An-ha and asks him to continue briefing them on the rest. Feeling a little embarrassed, An-ha tells them that he has repeated the first year twice already, which is why he is the class leader for the 2nd time. He then comments that they have been standing for too long and that anyone who wants to sit down shouldn't hesitate. He proceeds to explain that the first thing they need to do is select a class leader, clarifying that although they are just students, they also receive assignments, meaning that the class leader will be responsible for leading the group during missions. He adds that the role of the class leader is limited to non-training matters, as training remains the instructor's responsibility. One of the students raises his hand and asks how the leader is chosen. An-ha replies that he doesn't know how it's done in other classes, but in theirs, the students compete against each other, and the leader is chosen through a vote afterward. He then announces that the competitions will begin now, explaining that their purpose is to test strength. Therefore, no one will be allowed to use magic, and there will be rest periods between fights. However, Young seems visibly irritated. An-ha asks him why he looks so upset. Young replies that everything he has said or done so far is infuriating. He then picks up a sword and tells him that he needs to understand that they are in the Lee family, and if he wanted to act as if they were in an ordinary school, he should have gone to a safe place instead. An-ha responds that Young's words are far too harsh, saying that he only wanted to resolve all problems peacefully. But Young glares at them intensely before declaring that they clearly don't understand words. Therefore, he demands that they step forward one by one and challenge him, because he will defeat them all instantly. The competition begins, and Young swiftly defeats every opponent in his path. An-ha is left stunned by what he is witnessing, unable to believe what is happening, especially since he has personally defeated many others before. However, his nervousness intensifies when Young suddenly calls out his name. Young instructs him to bring out the next student. At that moment, An-ha senses a powerful energy radiating from Young. He then hesitantly tells him that he is, in fact, the last student. Hearing this, Young smirks and tells him to step forward himself. The battle begins, and An-ha wonders why Young is pushing things to this extent, especially since this is just a sparring match with no rewards and not even an audience to watch. However, after exchanging a few blows with Young, he declares that he now understands the reason. He has grown used to feeling despair, but this time, he wants to win no matter the cost. An-ha attacks with all his might, but Young easily dodges. An-ha then states that he once believed surrendering was just another way of living, that accepting reality was a sign of maturity and becoming a man. Yet, despite that, he still desires victory. But suddenly Young launches a direct attack, declaring his victory. He delivers a powerful strike that knocks An-ha's sword out of his hand. An-ha falls to the ground, wincing from the intense pain in his hand. Young approaches him and tells him to go see the nurse for treatment. However, An-ha quickly gets up, grabs his sword with his other hand, and charges at Young in anger, insisting that the fight is not over yet. Young is surprised to see An-ha using his left hand instead of his injured right one. He also notices a clear change in his gaze compared to before. But once again, Young strikes his sword, forcing his hand back. Then he lands a solid blow to An-ha's abdomen. This time An-ha collapses completely, unable to stand. Young orders the other students to take him to the nurse for treatment. After that, Young stands before all the students and addresses them in a loud voice, explaining that those who don't understand that surrender makes life easier will never be able to endure until the end. Failing to fight until the last moment guarantees defeat. That is why he must fight under all circumstances, even in the simplest moments, so he can protect himself and those around him. He then asks them if they have ever lived this way before, because to him, this is the true meaning of struggle. Later, instructor Lee Jung approaches Young and tells him that he went too far, pointing out that 4 students have fractures, while 3 others have internal injuries. But Young replies that anyone who wants to live as part of the Lee family must understand that such injuries are nothing to be concerned about. Instructor Lee Jung responds by explaining that every student has their own circumstances. Young grows frustrated and shouts, asking if he really needs to explain something the students have already understood themselves. He then tells the instructor that people like him are rare in the family because he is a good person. However, at the same time, he emphasizes that these students belong to the Lee family, and if they stray from the right path, he will not hesitate to become a villain if necessary to set them straight. Before leaving, he instructs instructor Lee Jung to do his job properly. The next day, as Young heads to the academy, he tries to relax his muscles, feeling a deep soreness throughout his body from the intense battles he fought the day before. When he arrives, he finds all the students standing in front of him, their faces and bodies still bearing the marks of their injuries. He notices that some look frustrated and aggressive, but none of them avoid making eye contact with him. At that moment, he is certain that if they were still as cowardly as they were yesterday, he would have lost all hope in them. But now he feels reassured. Then Kim Han approaches Young, prompting Young to comment that he arrived early today. Kim Han replies that he was worried because he was the only one who had shown Young his weakness. Young responds that it's only natural. He is still a student and still has a lot to learn. Kim Han then says he has a question he wants to ask. Young tells him to go ahead and ask without hesitation. Kim Han then asks what he needs to do to become as strong as Young. Young responds by saying that he is not at a level where he can teach anyone, but he acknowledges that Kim Han has a good sense of combat. It seems that Kim Han does not fully grasp what he means, so Young continues, explaining that during their fight yesterday, Kim Han managed to evade his attacks 3 consecutive times. He adds that if Kim Han utilizes this combat intuition, his techniques will become far more effective than relying on brute strength. Young also assures him that if he dedicates himself to refining his skills, he will undoubtedly become a completely different person over time. Just then, another person approaches them. When Young turns to see who it is, he realizes it is Ha, but his hand is in a cast, and his body is covered in bruises. Young comments on his condition, saying that he looks severely injured and won't be able to train with them in his current state. However, Ha responds by asking if Young himself would choose to rest in his position, implying that he would likely keep training despite his injuries. He even suggests that Young might consider him pathetic if he decided to give up. Ha then continues, asserting that he came today because he never wants to hear the kind of words Young said to him yesterday again. Upon hearing this, Young feels overjoyed and thinks to himself that Ha has changed significantly. After that, Coach Lee Jung calls everyone to gather and announces that 4 students have valid reasons for their absence, while 5 others failed to show up without any justification, leaving only 11 students remaining. When he looks at their condition, he can't help but feel sympathy for them, noticing that they all appear exhausted. The overall atmosphere has completely shifted, all because of one person who brought them to this state. The coach then informs them that today's schedule was originally supposed to include a basic assessment. However, given their current condition, he has decided to make a slight adjustment. The evaluation will begin immediately without delay. After some time, the physical assessment concludes, leaving all the students so drained that they can barely stand. Coach Lee Jung then announces that Young will be supervising their individual training. Young thinks to himself that the evaluation lasted a full 10 hours, and even he is starting to feel a bit fatigued. However, he knows that resting is not an option. Later, as Young climbs the stairs, the students exchange comments about his behavior, remarking that he is acting differently today. They find it surprising that he didn't grant them a day off, especially since many of them were injured yesterday. But Young calls for their attention, instructing them to focus. He then states that by now, they should all understand who he is, clarifying, just as Ha did yesterday, that the class leader holds full authority over everything except for direct orders from Coach Lee Jung. He also informs them that his training will be extremely rigorous, which is why he asks anyone who believes they can endure it to step forward, making it clear that he has no intention of accepting those who cannot keep up. One student, Kim Seong, seems displeased with Young's words. However, Young continues, saying that if anyone objects to him being the leader, they are free to challenge him at any time. If anyone manages to land a solid hit on him, he will willingly relinquish his position. He then concludes by stating that he won't waste any more time talking, and that training will commence immediately, with each student facing the person next to them. After some time, Young announces that out of everyone, only 6 students managed to endure, while the rest gave up halfway. He then tells them that's enough for today and dismisses them. However, some students remain dissatisfied with Young, unable to understand why he is treating them this way, nor do they see any reason to follow him. At that moment, Kim Han interrupts them, urging them to be quiet. He points out that he is utterly exhausted, yet Young was just as fatigued after all this training, and despite that, none of them were able to land a single hit on him, even when he was completely worn out. But the students do not respond to him. Instead, they turn to Ha and ask for his opinion, remarking that last year was undoubtedly better than this. To this, Ha replies that last year was so great that he had to repeat the year. He then adds that if he doesn't change this time, he will remain nothing more than a failure who does nothing but lose. He affirms that even if his hands and legs were broken, he would still be determined to try his best this time. After that, he addresses them directly, stating that they all know the truth, the very truth that Young is trying to make them realize. He emphasizes that he wants to experience the struggle Young spoke of because he feels that this is his last chance. Then, with a serious tone, he urges them to wake up and stop deceiving themselves, reminding them that deep down, they all know the truth. The scene then shifts to Young, who is training his magic with his aunt, Lee Kyung. She appears frustrated due to yet another failed attempt and expresses her disappointment, saying that every time she tries to refine the aura, it collapses again. She continues, explaining that she never expected this issue to arise after Young reached the 3rd star. She also regrets not having any ancient records detailing how people used aura in the past, asserting that if she had such information, solving this problem would have been much easier. Young seems lost in thought as he focuses on the ring containing Mujin, saying that he is unable to access the new part of his memory. The memories he does recall indicate that Mujin was filled with a terrifying black energy, and countless monsters feared him. Even the bravest heroes could not defeat him. As a result, a large group of heroes gathered to seal him in Jilmangwei in the north, and as a reward, the king granted them a piece of land. Afterward, these heroes forged a sword, and that sword was Muhin. Young expresses his excitement over learning this information about Mujin, considering it to be a valuable discovery. Lee Kyung then speaks to Young, expressing her amazement that he has already reached the aura stage, pointing out that he has now taken his first steps toward the 3 stars, all through his own efforts. She reassures him that they will soon be able to solve the problem they are facing and adds that he has now mastered both amplification and multiplication techniques. Young then asks her what they should do after reaching the 3rd star. She responds that this will grant him the ability to use aura techniques, though she clarifies that mastering them will take a long time. She then asks about his training at the academy, noting that he seems particularly exhausted lately. Young sighs and replies that nothing new has happened. Lee Kyung smiles at him and tells him that if things are becoming difficult, she is willing to help. Young then asks how she intends to help him, to which she confidently replies that he only needs to trust her. Soon, he will understand. The scene shifts back to Young at the academy, where he has a bad feeling ever since Lee Kyung asked him to trust her. Meanwhile, Coach Lee Jung informs the students that today they will have an instructor specializing in mana techniques and asks them to stand straight and focus. He then announces that the person who will be conducting the lesson is Lee Kyung from the Lee family's research center. Coach Lee Jung asks the students to applaud her, and Lee Kyung appears slightly embarrassed. She then tells them that she doesn't like to waste time, so she will begin the lesson immediately. As Lee Kyung starts her explanation, Young is astonished by how clearly and effectively she presents the information. After some time, she announces that the boring part of the lecture is over, and now it's time for the fun part, where she will teach them an improved version of the techniques developed at the research center. Coach Lee Jung is surprised when he realizes that the session is not yet finished. However, Lee Kyung responds enthusiastically, saying that they haven't even started yet. She then asks all the students to stand up, informing them that she will demonstrate the technique only once, so they must pay close attention. She then pulls Young aside, and he asks her what exactly she is doing. She explains that it is only natural for anyone directly connected to the family to receive all kinds of support upon entering the academy. However, since Young has received no such support so far, she has decided to provide him with some assistance. Young feels happy and thanks her for caring about him. Then Lee Kyung places her hand on Young and says that if her theory is correct, his power should multiply. Coach Lee Jung then calls the students, informing them that they will now apply the mana techniques they learned from Lee Kyung in sparring matches. He instructs each student to choose a training partner. Ha approaches Young and asks to be his partner, assuring him that he will not hold back at all. Young responds enthusiastically, saying that he is glad to hear that because he won't allow him to make the first move. As Aunt Lee Kyung watches Young's fight against Ha, she comments that he has no mercy. She adds that he reminds her of herself when she was younger. She then listens to the students talking about Young, expressing their dislike for him because he is completely different from them. They point out that his physique is unlike theirs, and that he possesses special abilities they do not have. Even though they also put in effort, Young started from a level far beyond them. Lee Kyung then turns toward them and calls out to them, catching them off guard with her presence. She approaches them further and asks if they were referring to Young in their conversation. The students feel intimidated and apologize to her, saying that they regret speaking harshly about him. However, Lee Kyung grows even more displeased and questions how much they actually know about him to speak about him in such a way. Kim Seong intervenes, telling her that she doesn't understand how much effort they have put in either. Yet, Young treated them as if they were worthless. He adds that their upbringing was completely different from his, which is why there is such a vast gap between them. As she walks away, Lee Kyung responds by saying that they know nothing at all. She adds that it would be better if they never found out, because if they ever realized how different his daily life was from theirs, they would understand that what they consider suffering is nothing more than child's play. Kim Seong feels a surge of anger and becomes determined to find out what makes that lowly Young so different from them. However, he reassures himself that he will uncover the truth over time. At the end of the day, after training concludes, Young sits down to rest while Kim Seong watches him from a distance, muttering that he sees no difference. He believes that Young talks about his struggles, but the truth is that he was simply born different from them. Two other students then approach Kim Seong, reminding him that he had previously said he would follow Young. They ask if it is acceptable to continue lingering around the main residence, to which Kim Seong reassures them that there is no issue as long as they remain students and do nothing against the rules. He also notes that Young doesn't even live in the main family area. He then firmly states that they cannot allow that lowly Young to control them any longer, and that he will personally put an end to this today. They wait for Young in front of the research center, but they are surprised by how long he is taking inside. They suggest to Kim Seong that they should head home since they are exhausted from today's training and have no idea what Young is doing inside for so long. They bid Kim Seong farewell before leaving. However, just before they walk away, Young finally emerges from the research center. They are astonished to see him heading toward the training center, a facility reserved exclusively for direct family members. Suddenly they hear a loud noise but are unable to determine its source. One of the students tells Kim Seong that this is enough, insisting that he knows Young is not a bad person and that he doesn't treat them this way out of hatred. Kim Seong replies that they should make an effort like An Ha, who has never missed a single training session. Yet, he still cannot comprehend the difference between himself and Young. The other students leave this time, but Kim Seong remains in place, determined to prove, one way or another, that he is not wrong. He continues following Young until he reaches his residence. Just then, a guard notices him and tells him that Bong takes this path every day at a late hour, though he did not expect him to bring another student along today. Kim Seong is stunned as he realizes that Young does this every single day. He wonders to himself what Young had been doing there all this time, but the guard answers that this would normally be considered a violation of the rules. However, he will overlook it this time and advises him to return to his dorm quickly. Before leaving, Kim Seong glances at Young's residence and notices that the lights are still on, even though it is past 2 in the morning. After that, he decides to head back since it is already too late. The next day, at 5 in the morning, Kim Seong wakes up with a severe headache, a consequence of staying up too late the previous night. He goes out for a walk but is struck with shock. Right in front of him sits Young, looking utterly exhausted. He wonders to himself, even if Young was born with a strong body and an inexhaustible mana supply due to his lineage in the Lee family, is it normal for him to sleep only 3 hours a day? As for himself, when he returns home, he rests for a while, watches TV, or plays games before sometimes training alone, maintaining a balance between leisure and sleep. He then approaches Young, who looks at him in confusion, and asks what brought him here so early. Kim Seong responds with another question, asking if he isn't tired after yesterday. Young, now irritated, tells him that he must have been one of the students who followed him around all night. Kim Seong responds frankly, admitting that he did indeed follow him. He then adds that Young receives support because he is a direct descendant of the family and that he started from a completely different position than the rest of them. Young replies that he has lived this way since childhood. While he used to sleep a little longer before joining the academy, that does not change anything. He then answers Kim Seong's question, confirming that of course he feels extremely exhausted. Kim Seong then asks him why he pushes himself so mercilessly. However, Young simply places a hand on Kim Seong's shoulder and tells him that he already knows the answer to that question himself. Then he leaves, leaving Kim Seong deep in thought, overwhelmed with frustration toward himself. The scene then shifts to Ja Lee, who is in the middle of training. His assistant enters and informs him that he has brought the requested documents. Ja Lee takes the documents and begins reading through them, then expresses his dissatisfaction, stating that they are insufficient. He notes that dungeons of the 7th and 8th levels pose a great danger to the students. He further explains that weapons and supplies can be replaced, but people cannot. He adds that his goal is to prepare individuals capable of surviving under the harshest conditions. His assistant affirms that he understands and will carry out the instructions precisely. Before leaving, the assistant mentions that there is something else he wishes to report. He then recounts what Young did, commenting that the look in his eyes was entirely different, even for children. It was the gaze of someone who had lost many things, endured humiliation, and witnessed suffering time and again. He continues, explaining that leading others is an entirely different matter compared to everything Young has done so far. After that, he hands Ja Li some papers and requests that he modify the test content. Since Lee is in the same academic year, he wants to raise the difficulty level of the test for all students. He seeks to determine whether Young is truly capable of leading others, asserting that this test will be the perfect way to find out. The scene then shifts to Coach Lee Jung as he enters the academy. However, he is surprised to find the students training, despite it being a rest day. They had been there for quite some time, meaning he didn't even need to call them to start training. The students are equally surprised to see the coach. He comments that he never expected them to put in such effort even on their day off. He then instructs one of them to wake up any student still asleep, as he has something important to tell them. Once all the students have gathered, he announces news that may come as a surprise. The midterm exams have been rescheduled to an earlier date. For this reason, they have decided to grant the students a 1-week break first. He then tells them to consider it their final break and advises them to use it for rest. He also emphasizes that they should not push themselves too hard in training during the break to avoid injuries. However, he reassures them that he has complete confidence in their ability to succeed in the test, as they have given their utmost efforts so far. The scene then shifts to Young, who is puzzled by what just happened. He wonders whether the decision to grant a break and reschedule the exams is actually a good thing, or if there is something more behind it. He then notices that the students are still around and asks them why they haven't left yet. Kim Han begins speaking to him, pointing out that they have been observing him. He continues, reaffirming his statement and asking Young what he plans to do during his break. Young responds by stating that this is their personal time, questioning why they are so concerned about it. He tells them they are free to rest whenever they want, as he won't force them to train during their break. This surprises the students, who find it hard to believe that such words came from Young. They had assumed he would assign them intense training since there were no official sessions at the moment. This reaction leaves Young bewildered, prompting him to wonder about the kind of image they have of him to expect such things. He then asks if they truly want to start again, just as they did on the first day, even during their break. After that, he smiles and emphasizes the importance of resting when necessary, explaining that if he had told them this from the start, they wouldn't have listened to him. He also expresses his hope that they will use their time wisely. He then tells them that he will meet them again after the break. The students are delighted by Young's words. The scene then shifts to his aunt Lee Kyung's research center. She tells Young that she heard about their break, but was surprised that he came straight away, just to bother his dear aunt as quickly as possible. Appearing exhausted, she adds that she is still buried under a mountain of research that she needs to complete. Young responds by saying that she was just watching something strange on his phone a moment ago. This irritates her, and she rebukes his remark, clarifying that what she was watching was Hamin being honored by the president. She also mentions that he has fully recovered from leukemia. Young replies that he didn't mean to bother her. He was simply curious about what she was watching. He then asks if his father's orders were behind the decision to reschedule the exams. She confirms this, explaining that she received direct instructions from the head of the family. Young begins to contemplate, realizing that this means the evaluations will be far more difficult than he had anticipated. He understands that he now needs to surpass his limits in mana techniques. To achieve that, he must read the new memories of Mujin. However, he also realizes that his inability to access them means that something is still missing. He had assumed that modifying Mujin would grant him access to the new memories, but that did not work. He then concludes that he has no choice but to think more deeply about the matter. At that moment, the research papers belonging to his aunt, Lee Kyung, fall in front of him, prompting her to warn him to be careful. She reminds him that she asked him to keep the papers in order. However, his hand lands on a research paper discussing the fundamental differences between ancient and modern weapons. It explains that, in the past, weapons were primarily designed for defeating monsters. After reading this information, Young suddenly stands up, surprising his aunt, Lee Kyung, who asks him what happened. He responds, while running, that he has discovered the solution, promising to explain everything later, but stating that he needs to head to the training center immediately. The scene shifts to Young arriving at the training center, where he summons Mujin and declares his intention to visualize a target in his mind. He explains that he wants to imagine a target larger than himself, a monster that poses a threat to humanity. He then focuses his energy, stating that he envisions a massive beast. He remarks that any technique that disregards efficiency fails to combine strikes, neglects energy conservation, lacks evasive and defensive maneuvers, or merely appears flashy without actual destructive power is ultimately useless. He then proclaims that he has finally understood Mujin's true purpose, to exterminate monsters. Young activates Mujin's skill, Demon Piercer. He expresses his joy at finally succeeding and wonders what kind of memories Mujin will reveal to him this time. After that, he is pulled into the memories, finding himself in the training center. He notices that these memories resemble the first time he held Mujin, but the only difference this time is the perspective from which he is viewing the events. Then he spots someone training and realizes that it is the same person he saw previously. He notes that this person's speed is incredibly fast. Additionally, he observes that every time this individual switches weapons, his aura changes as well. Not only that, but the shift in aura also causes Mujin's entire form to transform. Young is astonished when he hears the person speaking to someone else, remarking on how quickly he changed his fighting style once again. The conversation continues as he tells the other person to stop spying on his training. He then asks if he has given names to the techniques he has been using from Mujin. The person responds that he has not done so yet because he does not currently consider these moves to be techniques. He then suggests that the other person can name them instead. After that, he asks if he brought anyone else to this place, but the other person firmly denies the possibility. He then attacks, explaining that he had planned to face him in a fair duel, so there was no reason for him to bring anyone else along. At that moment, Young notices that the color of his eyes and hair must be distinctive traits of the direct lineage of the Lee family.